League of Legends, The Lord of the Thousand Year War. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 426, Goodwill. Along the way, following the Black Iron Guard to the nearest administrative office to get a temporary pass, Soraka successfully boarded the boat to Bolam. In a good mood, Soraka found that she seemed to like this green and gentle land, although she didn't care too much about being discriminated against by others. After all, she was already used to it, but she also longed for respect, attention, and understanding. At least the people in the Emerald Territory didn't call her a one-horned devil like the Raka people on Mount Targon, or have low-level and boring lust for her strange body like some bandits. She had never experienced such an equal and harmonious living environment before. Soraka found that compared with the cold Mount Targon, this place was more suitable for sipping tea and enjoying a quiet night. Big sister, you look so beautiful. When you smile. Soraka was stunned. She didn't even know that she had just smiled. Looking at the little girl who stood in front of her without knowing when, the one-horned star spirit first glanced at the beautiful woman who was sitting by the cabin and nodded and smiled at her kindly. A gentle smile appeared on the one-horned star spirit's face. Hesitantly stretched out his purple right hand to touch the well-behaved little girl, but the little girl took the initiative to pull her hand to her head, allowing Soraka to fulfill her little wish that was difficult to achieve. After gently rubbing the little girl's head, Soraka retracted her arm and greeted the little girl to prevent accidents caused by the turbulence of the ship. In this world, most of the time, kindness is not only not rewarded, but will attract more malice. She has long been accustomed to such results, so she cherishes every bit of unfamiliar kindness and tenderness, and is willing to double her efforts. Little girl, what's your name? Soraka, who doesn't know much about Naxos and speaks Valoran, doesn't know if the little girl can understand her language, but after all, Naxos is also from the Valoran language family, so she won't be completely unable to understand it. Big sister, your accent sounds like Valoran. The little girl had a bob haircut and looked very cute in a red and yellow floral dress. My name is Betty. What's your name? Betty, my name is Soraka. Sister Soraka, you must be a very good person. Soraka was stunned. She was a little curious about why Betty said that, but Betty continued with a smile. As soon as my sister got on the boat, she reserved the best seats for my mother and other uncles and aunts. I heard from the boatman that my sister is also a very powerful wizard. She cured the boatman's painful knee in one go. So I say my sister is a very good person. That's amazing. Betty, did your mother teach you these things? Yeah, mom said that the reason she married my father was because she knew that my father was a good man. Betty also wanted to marry a good man when she grew up. Haha, Betty is still so young, and you're thinking about getting married? The boat was very stable from beginning to end. The expected bumps did not happen. The little girl took the initiative to sit in Soraka's arms and hugged Soraka's warm waist and abdomen. Of course, mom said that there are not many good people in this world, so you have to take the initiative to seize the opportunity. Sister Soraka is such a good person. She must be very popular with big brothers, right? Facing Betty's innocent and curious eyes, Soraka smiled gently. No one likes my sister like this. Most people still like Betty and Betty's mother like this. In many people's eyes, my sister is just a monster. Woo woo, my sister is not a monster. Betty shook her head vigorously, but her eyes lit up. She recalled the contents of a book that her mother often reads secretly and asserted firmly, if others don't like it, Lord Lester will definitely like Sister Soraka. Ah, why would Lord Lester like Sister Soraka? Soraka was a little confused. She didn't know why the little girl said that. Moreover, she came to Emerald Territory this time for Lord Lester of Emerald Territory. Looking at Betty's appearance, she seemed to know something about Lester. Betty was very proud of Soraka's surprised expression. Because Lord Lester is the most gentle person in the world. My mother's book says that Lord Lester never cares whether it is human or not. Dragon birds, stone armor lizards, Urdok and Enoch. Ahem. Betty? Come to my side. My back is a little itchy. Okay. Sister, I'll go over there. Soraka looked at Betty, who was suddenly called back by her mother with a blank face. Amid the embarrassing expressions of the people around her who were trying to hold back their laughter until their faces blushed, Betty's mother interrupted her good daughter's rebellious remarks. She didn't know when her daughter saw her private collection, but this was definitely not the time to talk about the Lord. Don't tell that big sister about Lord Lester, especially about this, understand? Otherwise, Mom will be arrested, and then you won't be able to see Mom. Oh, I know, Mom. After quietly teaching her daughter a lesson for being embarrassed, the woman smiled at Soraka and put the nervous Betty back. Betty, just now. In short, Lord Lester will never hate you, don't worry. Betty patted her chest and promised. Happy times are always short. The 8 people on the boat finally arrived in the north of Borum and the southern foot of the Silver Mountains. I thought it was time to say goodbye, but coincidentally, Betty and her mother were also going to cross the Silver Mountains to reach Fidlet on the Nokmachi Plain, so the 3 of them became companions and got on the carriage to Fidlet. The carriage drove to the foot of the mountain. It was already dark. The Emerald Guard soldiers at the intersection stopped the carriage and began to check the identities of the passengers one by one. Taking out the sheepskin temporary pass obtained in Graftport, the soldier glanced at it, returned it to Soraka and reminded her, "Madam, please go to the Mage Association or the administration office as soon as possible after arriving in Fidlet to apply for identity proof. The Emerald Territory is now in a state of war, and the Mage Association is in urgent need of a large number of magic talents. Both the treatment and benefits are very good. I personally recommend that you go to the Mage Association. Thank you." The carriage continued on the road. The 3 people who worked day and night sat in the back of the carriage and began to share the food they brought with each other. Soraka's food was a bit rough and hard to swallow Shurima stone biscuits, while Betty and her mother's food was exquisite bread and dried fruits. In contrast, Soraka's food was a bit inferior. Just when Soraka wanted to apologize and take back the food, Betty and her mother took the stone biscuits mixed with wheat bran without any hesitation and ate them with water. Silently taking the bread and dried fruits, Soraka lowered her head and ate them in small bites. Speaking of which, why did Miss Soraka go to Fidlet? The woman who was familiar with Soraka knew that they were not too unfamiliar with each other and finally asked the question she wanted to ask. "Actually, I came for Lester, the Lord of the Emerald Territory." Chapter 427 The Masked Mother Who Chose to Give In. In the Emerald Territory, deep in the magic testing ground of the underground fortress of the shimmering Silver Mountains, Zina was sitting alone next to the ice coffin, taking down the soul pyroxene that had lost its color and replacing it with another one. On the ice coffin was a metal mask made of mountain copper with a hideous shape. The woman wore a ring on her finger that symbolized supreme power, but until this time, the woman was still not used to it. Inside the ice coffin, the hole in Miss Ha's chest had completely recovered, and her fair and tender skin looked very attractive in the cold air generated by the ice coffin, but Zina didn't look happy at all. No one gave her delicious pink berries anymore. "Sister, Brother Lester really didn't come back. The North Sea Fortress and Ed City have become a dead place. Everyone is dead. In order to help you avenge, Brother Lester has paid too much for you, sister." Holding the puppet kitten in her arms, Zina was very depressed. "Sister, I really want to find Brother Lester, but before he left, Brother Lester gave me the emerald collar. I can't go anywhere but stay here, because Brother Lester said he would come back one day, and I can't let him down. If it were you, what would you do?" Of course, Miss Ha in the ice coffin did not respond to her sister's words. Hina sighed deeply, put down the puppet cat in her hand, and looked at the mask on the ice coffin. "Sister GC always said that I don't learn like him. My height is not like him, my speech is not like him, and my movements are not like him. Sister, I'm afraid I will never be able to reach Brother Lester's height in my life. Can I really wear this mask well?" Only Hina's voice echoed in the cold and lonely secret room. Hina's heart was getting colder and colder, and more lonely. Morris said I had plenty of time to learn and imitate. I never thought this day would come to me. Sister, I didn't realize it before, until Morris put the development of Emerald Territory in front of me. I realized that Emerald Territory is really big, with more than 100,000 people living on the Nokmachi Plain. To manage this territory well requires not only wisdom, but also sufficient patience. We have many enemies, so many that even Brother Lester can't handle them. If you and I protect Brother Lester together, will Brother Lester never be in danger? Master, it's time to leave. Morris's voice came from outside the door. Sighing, Zinna stood up and put the cold mask on her face. Looking at the puppet kitten, the woman did not pick up her favorite gift in her life again and left the kitten alone on the ice coffin. In her absence, her cat would accompany her sister. Sister, wake up soon. I need your help, and Emerald Territory also needs you. Zinna did not notice that, after putting on the mask, her voice became much colder. In the underworld, the immortal residence built by Mordekaiser, in the underworld city arena called Mitnalachen, a cruel duel elimination competition is taking place. One-on-one, the loser will become the winner's weapon and equipment. Mordekaiser, wearing black iron plate armor, sat high on the throne of bones. The Dark King was bored watching his green soldiers fighting green. As a sleepless undead, he actually dozed off, which made Mordekaiser feel offended. Execute them all. Yes. Under the order of the tyrant, the two newly captured souls who had not yet been determined were pressed on the execution platform of the arena by the ruthless soldiers and their souls flew away on the spot. However, the scattered souls did not go to the position of the Mother of Masks, but were forever imprisoned under the dark black soul brick wall of Mitnalachen, the underworld city. The gate opened, and the remaining 24 souls who had not yet participated in the battle thought they still had a chance to fight, but they could only be pressed on the guillotine by the soldiers of the Nether Legion, and executed one by one in despair. When the guillotine fell, they understood what cruelty was. After glancing at the execution platform with boredom, Mordekaiser stood up and turned to leave. Sebastian followed behind him respectfully, following Mordekaiser's steps. I heard that the stupid bird of the Void Evil Owl suffered a great loss. My lord, yes, the Void Evil Owl was seriously injured, and I'm afraid it won't be able to recover in a short time. Oh, who has such great ability? It is said that it is immortal in the material realm. Mordekaiser stopped, and the dark blue eternal flame in the black iron helmet seemed to be brighter. Mortal? Yes, compared to my lord, he is just a mortal who has mastered a little power. Tell me about him. I heard from the returning ghost that the mortal is called Leistert, the lord of the Emerald Territory, serving Naxos. In the past few months, he has also massacred 2 cities. His whereabouts are currently unknown. Massacred 2 cities, so he can barely be considered a talent. Mordekaiser pondered for a moment, and continued to move forward. Keep an eye on this Leistert, and if you have a chance, capture him. Understood. Tell me, how are you going to deal with those masked idiots? Just as Mordekaiser and his generals were discussing how to deal with the masked spirits, the Void Evil Owl was lying in the palm of the Mother of Masks to recover from his injuries. Mother, the extraordinary power of the mortal world is too strong. Such a powerful soul should not exist in the material world. I'm afraid that Leistert is no exception. Darkwing, there is no need to beat around the bush in front of me. After getting the approval of the Mother of Masks, the Void Evil Owl continued. Mother, in the case of exhaustion, the root power alone cannot produce enough soul power. I think we should weaken the strength of all the souls that have returned to the world. This will not only allow the material world to have enough souls to maintain balance, but also prevent the emergence of overly powerful souls. If necessary, we can let the masked spirits hunt the strong and cut off the inheritance of magic and power in the material world. I think the large-scale soul annihilation in the material world this time is probably related to the Star Spirit. Lester is just a pawn, and even we are all objects of use. The words were already very euphemistic, but the Void Spirit Evil Owl clearly felt that the masked mother had a terrible anger. It was self-evident who this anger was directed at. Darkwing, this is a world that is about to be broken. After a moment of silence, the masked mother, who had regained her composure, said in a deep voice, "It's like a ship full of holes. What we can do is to let the ship sail with difficulty. The Star Spirit is a guest who can directly sink the ship, and there are more than one Star Spirit guest on this ship. The void spirit Evil Owl's eyes flickered twice and whispered, "Mother." Then Lester. The masked mother interrupted Darkwing. "Lester, you don't have to worry about it. Our biggest enemy now is Modkaiser." Chapter 428 A Different Lester. Virnus, tell me about Fidlet. Yes, Fidlet is located in the core of Emerald Territory, surrounded by mountains, lush and beautiful, divided into the inner city and the outer city, and divided into 5 major areas. On the waterway leading to Emerald Territory from the second branch of the Black Iron River, Lester was lying on the deck enjoying the sunbath. This is a passenger ship to Fidlet. Behind Lester, Virnus, with brilliant blonde hair, was wearing a neutral guard uniform and massaging the man's shoulders. The heroic woman was telling the glory of Fidlet. More than 5 months have passed since the fall of Hedi. Virnus has forgotten her former identity. From the moment she killed the master she once served with a long sword and cut her own throat, Hedi's Virnus was dead. Virnus didn't know how she was resurrected afterwards. She only knew that a second life belonged to the Lord of Emerald Territory, a terrible man named Lester. The reason why the man resurrected her was, "I need someone to run errands and warm my bed, so I'll use you for a while." She did both of these things. The former was already familiar to her, and the latter was still being studied. The strangest thing was that Lester, the Lord of Emerald Territory, seemed to have lost his memory and forgotten everything. Whether it was the Emerald Territory or the past of the identity of Lester, he had forgotten everything completely, and he would go crazy from time to time, so much so that he knew Lester better than his master Lester. As it should be, the master took her on a journey to Emerald Territory, with the reason being, "I want to see what kind of tricks I did in the past, maybe I can find some resonance points." Hearing what you said, it seems that Lester is still very capable. Master Lester, you have always been very powerful. Not only did Virn say this, but she also thought so in her heart. It was not flattery, but Lester was a little unhappy. "Vince, I have told you many times, don't treat me as Lester. He and I are not the same person. He is him, I'm me. Understand? Lester has always been very powerful. Do you really understand? If you make me understand, I will understand. Keep pressing. Tell me what happened recently." Yes. After roughly sorting out the information she had collected recently, Vince talked freely. Rumor has it that, because the ice crystals covering the frozen North Sea Fortress cannot melt, the North Sea Fortress has been renamed the Ice Fortress by the Emerald Territory. Currently, the Margaret Legion and the Alice Legion of the Emerald Territory have completely occupied the 2 major cities in the North Sea. A group of Emerald Territory soldiers who wanted to leave the Legion obtained the right to reclaim land and the right to live there. They moved to the North Sea and joined the Hedi people of Naxos to become the first group of residents of the North Sea. More than a month ago, the Nax and Vakal and Ursus legions ambushed the Kalis plundering troops near the Iron Mountains of the Black Iron Castle. The Kalis bandit named Dorico Bloodthorn was beheaded by Vakal Rezus himself. The Kalis people contracted their defense line, and the Vakal and Ursus legions are marching towards the Black Iron Castle where Jelena is. Apart from being a little rigid, Lester, who squinted his eyes while enjoying the service of the beauty, was quite satisfied with his new tool. After all, she was a female guard who had received elite education from the Hedi royal family and specialized in serving the nobles. Not only was she impeccable in etiquette, she also had good abilities in intelligence and combat, and she was loyal after a little training. Compared with these advantages, Virnus's beauty and figure were not worth mentioning. For now, he was not prepared to rashly contact any forces or any legacy left by the past Lester without regaining his memory. Although he was unwilling to admit that he was Lester, it was an indisputable fact that Lester was him. According to the consistent style of the previous ambitious Lester, he was probably ready for a fight to the death before going to Hedi for revenge. This also meant that the previous Lester had arranged his funeral in advance. Combined with the current situation, even without Lester, the Emerald Territory also had a demon face lord in charge, and everything in Fidlet was in a stable state, and there was no shortage of lords at all. Under such circumstances, returning to Emerald Territory as Lester would be a very troublesome matter. After returning, he would inevitably have close contact with those people he was most familiar with, but knew nothing about. It was not a good thing for him, or those people now. What if he felt that his former subordinates or women were not pleasing to the eye and recovered his memory after killing them? It would be funny. He would feel disgusted if he just hugged a woman he didn't know. What's more, he just wanted to do something he wanted to do now, and he might not do worse than Lester. It's decided. What? Without caring about the jealous eyes of others on the boat who wanted to replace him, the man turned around and pulled the dazed blonde female guard to the back of the chair. After adjusting the angle, he leaned back comfortably, perfectly giving his head a warm and soft pillow. Reliability is also a good quality of female guards. Lester secretly added a little about the characteristics of a toolman. From now on, my name is List, and your name is Zione. You are my most loyal servant. Let's do something interesting together. Excuse me for refusing. Zione is too ugly. The pressured Vernus refused without hesitation. No objection, Zione. Go get me a bottle of mead for List. Vernus woodenly pulled back her body and let the back of the man's head hit the hard back of the chair. She turned and went to the cabin. At night, the ship had docked at the riverbank. Except for a few sailors, who were on night watch, most of the passengers had fallen asleep. However, Lester suddenly opened his eyes and got out of Vernus's bed. Lester, who simply wore a single piece of clothing and said hello to the sailor, walked out of the cabin and came to the deck. The Black Iron River at night reflected bright ripples of light under the moonlight, but a layer of strange grey fog rose near the ship. The grey fog seemed to have life, slowly flowing towards the direction of the ship, and soon covered the entire ship. La 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 la, an ethereal humming sound came from the fog, and Lester turned around. Gradually from illusion to solidity, two uninvited guests appeared in front of the man, a standing and walking sheep, and a wolf floating in the air with bared teeth. He soon sensed hostility from the wolf's attitude. His eyes swept across the two masks that were similar to the ethereal bodies, and Lester chuckled disdainfully. I've never seen anyone so happy to seek death. You are the first. Chapter 429 Night Talk. Arrogant human. Although he said so, the wolf did not act rashly. The guy who made the void spirit evil owl lose face was not easy to deal with, not to mention that this time he came for peace talks. Lester, you must have forgotten a lot of things. In fact, we came here this time to tell you how to restore your memory. The sheep spirit calmed the restless wolf spirit, took the initiative to put down the short bow in his hand and approached Lester, which surprised Lester. Don't be afraid, I won't hurt you. It seems that you know me very well. Lester hugged the sheep spirit who was half a body shorter than him, and looked at the wolf spirit with squinting eyes, his face full of malice. That little dog seems to be very dissatisfied with me. I'm a little scared and can't listen to you talk nicely. What are you going to do? Let go of the sheep. Where are you putting your hands? The wolf rushed over in grief and anger, but heard the sheep's calm voice. Wolf, please give me some time, okay? I need to talk to Lester. Did you hear that? She asked you to help stand guard. Go, little dog. The adults have something to talk about. Don't make trouble. The wolf disappeared on the spot with a cry, and only Lester and Lamb were left at the bow. In silence, the man pushed away the cold and soft body, and the malice on his face turned into disgust, which surprised the staggering Lamb. She thought she would be in turmoil for a long time, but she didn't expect that the reshaped personality was still a gentleman. He values you very much, but you still treat him like this. He has a beautiful body, but a disgusting soul. I feel it's not worth it for him. The wolf and I are one, but he forgot this, but I still remember it. The despised Lamb successfully attracted Lester's attention with a low voice, and the man frowned. We were born lonely, and because of loneliness, we were born with each other. The wolf is me, and I'm the wolf. I love the wolf as I love myself, but the wolf has different feelings for me. I have known this for a long time. This is actually not a good thing. One day, we will be united. The wolf's thoughts will make me fall in love with myself. Interesting. I apologize to you. You are not allowed to not forgive me. The man picked up Yang Ling again, as if he was holding a large doll. Yang Ling did not resist at all, and his body was passively pressed against the man. Feeling the man's body temperature, that was enough to burn his body. Then before you separated, were you a man or a woman? Yang glanced at Lester and said lightly, do you think I'm a man or a woman? Lester was stunned for a moment after being asked back by Yang Ling, and then laughed, sat on the deck, and hugged Yang Ling in his arms. If you talk like this, you must be a woman. I really want to occupy you forever. Yang Ling laughed twice without comment, and the atmosphere became cold. One person and one mask sat on the deck. No one wanted to talk until the fog dissipated a little, revealing the bright moon. Lester stared at the silver plate above the sky, his eyebrows filled with inexplicable sorrow. Losing your memory is like losing your past. It's really sad. You don't even know if the person who smiled at you stabbed you in the past. I would rather start over than get involved in a complicated relationship, which would hurt others and myself. But you are destined to disappear, and it's meaningless to think about these things. Although I guessed this a long time ago, I still feel a little disappointed when you say it. The cold and ethereal voice of the sheep spirit echoed on the quiet deck, and the words were a little harsh and ruthless. That's the truth. Now you are just a temporary substitute, a soul aggregate created by Lester himself, formed by crushing and stitching a large number of human souls in order to deal with the soul attack of Darkwing. You think this is your own character, but in fact it is just the subconscious that the real Lester desires, but refuses to possess. You are the part of his life that he chooses to abandon, the abandoned child he uses to block the knife. In fact, Lester himself was an extremely contradictory person. He was excellent and did many great things, but he was still confused and didn't know how to go on the road ahead. The tyrant of the underworld wanted to conquer the underworld in the material realm wholeheartedly. The mother of masks wanted to balance the world and keep it running. The stars were loyal to their own characteristics and thoughts and desired to control the world forever, and the void only wanted to destroy the world. A truly powerful person will only do one thing at all costs. Although Lester is powerful, he is also weak. In just a few decades, how can a mortal who suddenly obtains divine power control the divine power and become a true god? Emotions and ties alone are enough to make him hesitate and restrain his feet. A true god will only care about the things he cares about. Everything else is just passing clouds. Not to mention, he hasn't really lived like a mortal once. How can he really break free from the shackles? Listen to me, it must be very sad, right? Yes, a little, but I know that if you don't have any expectations from the beginning, you won't be too sad. And you are wrong. Although I'm the part he abandoned, I'm not necessarily worse than him. In my opinion, he is just a deserter who chose to escape in the face of danger. Maybe he has reached the end of his rope. Maybe he doesn't know that performing the forbidden technique of Icathia will put himself into a deep sleep and let you out. You say no. As expected, you are here to fight me, right? If I were here to fight, I wouldn't be sitting in your arms right now. At least in my opinion, you are better than Lester. He will be affected by the runes and be full of desires, but you won't. Compared to him, you are actually very clean and pure. Lester let go of Yang Ling and lay on the deck and closed his eyes. Just think of it as you praising me. At least now, I'm still me. I'm not him, and I won't let him affect me. Focusing on the man lying on the deck and relaxing, Yang Ling stood up and looked up at the sky, which was a realm she could not reach. With the hundreds of thousands of soul energies sacrificed by Lester, Miss Han is about to wake up. I can sense the gaze of the star spirit, which is now on the emerald neck. It's the Seraph Miss Han, right? What does that have to do with me? Lester turned over and said lightly. That's Lester's business. What does it have to do with me, Lester? While the man was talking, Yang Ling leaned over and pressed her cold cherry lips on the man's grayish white cheek, which stunned the man. You have the right to choose what to do. I should go now. Yang, if I die, will the real Lester come back to life? No one responded to the man's question. The fog had dissipated, and the starry sky appeared before his eyes again. Lester laughed at himself, turned over and prepared to admire the night sky. The next second, his sight was blocked. A ball of long orange hair fell from the edge of the boat to his eyes, swaying back and forth, full of liveliness. The heterochromatic pupils on her delicate face flashed with strange light. Lester even saw two pink hearts. The girl's smile was as bright as the stars. She playfully stuck out her tongue at the dumbfounded man, seeming a little embarrassed. Hi. How are you? I mean, can I be your girlfriend? You come out here to scare people in the middle of the night. Who the hell are you? Don't think I dare not beat you up just because you look cute. Chapter 430 Miss Zoe's Lollipop. Rolling down from the edge of the boat, Zoe waved her little hand and sat on the colorful bubbles, looking closely at the protagonist in the vortex of events with interest. My name is Zoe. What's your name? You can call me Lester. Hey, I remember you should be Lester. Am I wrong? While Zoe was observing Lester, Lester was also observing the little girl in front of him, guessing the girl's identity and intention. As for the talk of being a girlfriend, no one would believe it. So, what is the reason for Miss Zoe to come to me in the middle of the night? Can't afford shoes? But I can't make shoes, and there's no point in you looking for me, unless you are willing to wear a large size like mine. Not noticing any hostility, Lester was also willing to chat with the strange visitor in front of him. Seriously speaking, since he was born with consciousness, only the maid Vernus and Yangling could be considered acquaintances. Shoes and such are not important. What's important is jumping down from the bubble. Zoe reached into the astral channel that suddenly appeared and fumbled for a while. Soon, the orange-haired girl took out a shiny candy lollipop and handed it directly to the man. I think I like you. This is a lollipop I made by myself. It's delicious. After hesitating for a while, Lester took the lollipop from the girl, which made the girl smile even brighter. Miss Zoe, do you always speak so directly? What I mean is that it's hard for you to get the feelings that are really worth cherishing. If you do this, people never cherish things that come easily unless the grateful person knows from the beginning how much effort is put into this ease, and there are really few such people. But if you don't know how to express your feelings, will you never be able to convey your emotions? Sometimes, conveying emotions does not rely solely on language. Language is only the most intuitive way of expression, and it is also the most easily frustrated way. Just like now, you confessed your love when we first met, which only makes me feel uneasy and alert. I don't even know you. If I agree to you, it only means that I don't respect you and am not a trustworthy person. Woo woo. Did I do something wrong? Do you want to go back and do it again? Hearing Lester say this, Zoe frowned and looked a little distressed. Lester sighed and put the lollipop, which was obviously not an ordinary object, into his mouth. His mouth was suddenly filled with the sweetness of a pure girl. This taste made him both familiar and unfamiliar. Although she didn't know the purpose of her visit, the girl didn't seem to be a scheming person, but rather a child who hadn't grown up. I wonder if Miss Zoe knows what a girlfriend means. Zoe struggled out of her sad face and counted carefully on her fingers. Eat delicious food together, play fun things together, watch the sunrise together, appreciate the moonset together, share each other's feelings. It's a little bit missing, but the other aspects are pretty good. Then, Lester, do you like me? Facing Zoe's hopeful eyes, Lester raised his eyebrows, bit the lollipop in one bite, and swallowed it directly. Since the candy will melt and disappear in the mouth sooner or later, it's better not to be obsessed with the sweetness from the beginning. Please allow me to refuse, and my name is Lister, not Lester. Zoe stared blankly at the man, who went straight back to the cabin, waved her hand to keep him, but couldn't say anything. Well, is the lollipop not delicious? Everything in front of her was like a dream that made it impossible to extricate herself. Miss Ira, what should we name our daughter? You pick one, and I'll pick one. Then, let's name our eldest daughter Mishap. Haha, Mishap, that sounds nice. Then my baby daughter will be called Hina. Mishap is your sister, call sister. Your mother is Miss Ira, and your father is Kiram, call mom, call dad in the blink of an eye. The girl was able to stand and walk with difficulty. Daddy, mommy, woo woo woo, wow, it hurts. The girl struggled to get up from the ground, with tears in her eyes, and turned her head. Her fallen sister was being held in her father's arms and comforting her softly. Her father glanced at her anxiously, but was tormented by the sister in his arms and had no time to take care of anything else. The mother she summoned came over and picked her up. The more she thought about it, the more wronged she felt, and the more wronged she felt, the angrier she became, and the girl burst into tears. Zio, Mishap, blow on it, and it won't hurt. Don't cry, don't cry. Hoo 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 hoo. The mother blew cold air gently on her scraped right knee, and the girl's pain was slightly relieved. The comforted girl wiped her eyes stubbornly and kissed the woman's cheek, but her tears snot, and saliva were all smeared on it, making the beautiful woman look a little embarrassed. The girl expressed her little ideal. Mom, I want to grow up. Just like mom. The woman didn't care about the messy liquid on her face, and she always looked gentle. Zio mishap, I hope you will never grow up. The days of meeting her mother became less and less, and her father's face became more and more sad. When they met, her father and mother always quarreled. Only the cold stars in the sky remained unchanged. The girl grew up, but she felt that she was getting farther and farther away from her mother. The sadness on her father's face also dissipated and turned into emptiness and numbness. Finally one day, her father pulled her sister to her, struggling. Let's go. Your mother doesn't want you and Sinner anymore. But daddy, mommy. Woo-wah. The younger sister had already started to cry. Her father was comforting her sister and didn't care about herself. The girl couldn't say anything more. She could clearly feel her mother's reluctance and love, but the facts were completely different from what she thought. She didn't know what was going on. Following her father, the girl left the sky city made of gold, silver and gems, and returned to the foot of the giant peak. Her father smeared mud on her face and didn't allow her to wash it off. After boarding the ship to another continent with difficulty, the girl stared blankly at the starry sky, as if her mother was looking at her on the other side of the stars. Her father's voice echoed in her ears. I heard that there is no magic in Demacia, and there are no strange people. My daughters, I just hope you can grow up healthy. Mommy doesn't want daddy anymore. Daddy is a useless man, but even if daddy dies, he has to protect you well. Woo-wah. Being held in her father's arms, the girl could no longer suppress the grief in her heart, and cried loudly with her sister. Why are you crying? I'm so annoying. If you keep crying, I'll throw you Shurima beggars out of here. I'm sorry, sir. Please forgive me. I'll let my child calm down right now. Stop talking nonsense and get out of here. Okay, I'll get out of here right now. In the blurred vision, the father's straight body bent down towards the person who made the sound, like a collapsing mountain. Sister, don't cry, don't cry. Biting her lips tightly, the sobbing girl stuffed her right arm into her sister's mouth. The sister finally stopped crying, but the corner of her mouth began to bleed. Don't cry, don't cry. Sister is here. Chapter 431 The Only Mother. Sister. The familiar voice of calling echoed in her mind. The scene full of suffering and sadness in front of her changed. She had arrived at a place called Emerald Territory. In this place, she finally had enough to eat and put on beautiful clothes. Her father, who always had a sad face, no longer needed to beg for a living from others. He stood up and became a giant again. She and her sister no longer needed to consider their safety or worry about life. A man appeared in her world. It started with a pink berry, a surprising adventure full of childishness, and a new emotional bond made her look forward to more things beyond life. It was a love that was close to the deep family affection, but surpassed family affection, and could never be cut off. It smells so good. What kind of tree is this? As if she had returned to that moment, the girl looked blankly at the leaves in her palm that exuded a strange fragrance like clouds. A young man with a straight figure and handsome face came over, his voice soft and pure, full of magnetism. This is a camphor tree that is unique to the Nokmachi plain. An adult tree can grow to more than 10 meters. The trunk is straight and thick. The wood has a refreshing aroma and can be used to make furniture. It would be a pity to cut it down when it grows so tall, so it was not cut down. It is just right for keeping cool in the summer. The man's voice was like the green pines on the mountainside and the willows by the river. They accompanied me as I grew up with a caring and doting attitude. After I grew wings and saw my mother again, I became the man's real bride. It was a natural thing and sweet as honey. You are the woman of that devil. Look, you are still in a daze. Answer me, why don't you die? The beautiful picture was like a torn curtain. Miss Hal lowered her head in the darkness and looked blankly at her hands that were constantly bleeding. The world under her feet had been stained with blood, but the curses full of hatred and viciousness were still coming from the depths of the darkness like ants. Your life is like a rotten maggot, emitting a foul stench. Your beauty is worthless. Because of your life, hundreds of thousands of people have lost their lives. You only think about yourself. You are ashamed of your mother's expectations and love. You should be ashamed of this. Go to hell. 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 Children, women, old people, young people, everyone was buzzing in their ears, wishing they could die immediately. The darkness had turned into a sea of blood that drowned the soul. The cries and curses in the curses increased. Only the clearest and most impressive sentence was left in Miss Ha's ears. Miss Ha, what can you use to pay for your sins? You who once revered justice have become a cold-blooded butcher. Look at what he has done. The sea of blood swallowed everything. Miss Ha was dragged down headfirst by countless wronged souls. Everywhere she passed was the most painful moment for her soul. The earth and the sky turned into an icy abyss. The cold-blooded man held a long knife and harvested everyone's life indiscriminately. The extraordinary power he was proud of was chilling. This was a brutal massacre. Begging for mercy was useless. Cursing was useless. Praying was useless. All actions were useless. And everyone was dead. Staring blankly at the sea of corpses and blood in front of her, a gentle voice appeared in her ears. Kyle, is this what you want? Miss Ha turned her head and looked at her mother who had stood beside her at some point. The haunted meeting made the woman confused. She couldn't tell whether this was real or an illusion. She was not even sure whether she was dead or whether she was in the underworld preparing to go to another world. Mom. Lester, he killed hundreds of thousands of innocent people and carried a blood debt that could not be borne. This is the person you like, the person you want to entrust your life to. You think you are helping him, but in fact you are harming him. This world will not tolerate people like Lester to live. Miss Ra gently hugged her daughter and patted her daughter's back, just like she did when she was a child, and her daughter did not struggle. War will never be just, and innocent people will always be hurt. Your participation in the war will only stain your hands with the blood of injustice, but you will gain nothing. Even if you don't understand, Lester should understand. This world is not only populated by mortals, and the wars of mortals belong to mortals. Once you choose to intervene, then the wars of mortals no longer belong to mortals. In order to maintain the balance, there will always be a more powerful existence than you to stop you, hurt you, and pose a fatal threat to you. Lester understands this, but he doesn't care, and lets you go to the battlefield and be killed. In his eyes, you are just a powerful chess piece, a sword that can remove obstacles for him. No, that's not the case. Pushing her mother away, Miss Ha argued loudly. Lester is not that kind of person. He has his own reasons for doing all this. The reason is for you, my daughter. Do you really think so? In order to save you, he harvested hundreds of thousands of human souls in the North Sea and massacred 2 cities. This is the answer you want, right? He killed hundreds of thousands of people for you. Who bears the blood debt? Him or you? Miss Ha was stunned, but Miss Ira had a sad face. He could have directly attacked the fortress and defeated the enemy's defense line. He had such ability, but he let you take action and waited until you were seriously injured and dying before saving you by massacring the city. What will people say? What will the dead say? Who caused this disaster? And Lester, did he give all his souls to you? I don't know. I don't know. Miss Ira stepped forward and hugged her daughter again. He has always had his own purpose, a purpose that you don't know. He is a person who pursues power by any means. Souls are of great benefit to him, including you and Morgana. In his eyes, you sisters are just one of his powers. All his love for you and Morgana is just a shackle that imprisons you and Morgana. He knows that you and Morgana value friendship the most. He took advantage of this and kept you and Morgana by his side, letting you guard the Emerald Territory for him. The Emerald Territory is his other power. All true love has already set a price in secret. No, it's not like that. My daughter, people always want to deceive themselves, because only by deceiving themselves can they make themselves feel better, but deceiving themselves cannot solve any problems. You need to find the answers to the problems yourself. Kyle, now that you have deviated from the right path, the Emerald Territory, which has created massacres in the material realm, is about to face the wrath of God. Even I can't do anything. Only you can save the Emerald Territory. Are you a real mother? Miss Ra kissed Miss Ha's forehead lightly, as gentle as ever. Silly child, of course I'm your mother, your only mother in this world. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 432, 3 Women and a Drama. Opening her eyes, she saw the crystal coffin lid surrounded by cold air. She looked down at her smooth and full chest and confirmed that the fatal wound had disappeared. Miss Ha took a few seconds to understand the environment she was in and gently pushed the crystal coffin lid open. Hearing the noise, Hina, who was taking a short rest with her eyes closed, slowly opened her eyes, and her dazed eyes met Miss Ha's. Sister? Rubbing her eyes in disbelief, Hina rushed to Miss Ha, hugged the woman and cried loudly. Wow, I thought. Wow. Don't cry, sister is here. After Hina vented her emotions a little, Miss Ha rubbed Hina's head and asked, where is Lester? Hearing the name Lester, the joy on Hina's face quickly dimmed. Brother Lester. He has been missing. It has been several months. Missing? After a silence, Miss Ha said softly. Zina, can you tell me what happened during my coma? And, what happened in the North Sea? A golden ray of light streaked across the sky, piercing the darkness that enveloped the world. In a hotel in the outer city of Fidlit, a woman with a horn opened her golden eyes and sat up from the bed. Her plump and delicate violet skin exuded a charming luster in the morning light. The unconscious woman stretched her blood-pumping waist and began to put on a simple but conservative leather long dress. Well, it's a beautiful view. Sitting on a wooden chair by the window, Soraka made herself a cup of hot tea, and the woman turned her head to look out the window. The window of the hotel faces a small lake formed by the Black Iron River. Night insects have gone to sleep, but fireflies are still playing by the bushes. The cool and moist morning breeze swirls around the quiet lakeside. The soft morning breeze blows into the room and takes away the fatigue and turbid air of getting up early. The bright night stars blinking their eyes have not yet bid farewell to the earth, hanging in the sky reluctantly to accompany the last ray of time with Xiao. In the east, a golden sword has crossed the towering barriers of the Urus Mountains, bringing the first ray of sunlight at dawn. The bright moon and the scorching sun are always so inseparable. Soraka, who was enjoying the tranquility and comfort, chuckled twice and sipped a sip of bitter tea. The woman seemed to think of the two entangled enemies. After the smile, the bitterness of the tea made Soraka fall into sorrow again. This is the land of milk and honey that the Reika people can never imagine. When will the suffering of mankind end? What should I do? Endless fighting, duels, struggling to survive in ice, snow, and storms. Countless infant corpses are buried under the loess. Infants who cannot survive the trial have no chance to start their lives. They will be buried in the soil by the family who gave them life, like enemies. A big reason why the Reika people like to climb the holy peak is because of the environment they have lived in since childhood. In addition to the two major sects that believe in the sacrifices of the fiery sun and the bright moon, Lahorak is the most respected sect by every Reika. Warriors are the ruling body of the Reika people, and Lahorak is the noble who rules the warriors. Each of them is a powerful warrior who has experienced hundreds of battles and can do everything. Only by passing the Giant God Peak trial can the Reika people be qualified to participate in the selection of Lahorak. This is a prerequisite. This alone is enough to erase the possibility of most people's struggle, because most people will die on the way to climb the Giant God Peak and become regrettable losers. In the Raka tribe, people will spit on and kill cowards, but will not despise losers. The premise is that they can stand up with a bruised face, rather than becoming a dead dog that can never get up again. Soraka, who had finished a cup of tea, seemed to have tasted the hardships of the Raka people. Putting down the cup, the woman sighed and stood up, picked up her crescent staff, and walked to the door. With the help of the enthusiastic Betty family, she had obtained temporary residency in the Emerald Territory after recording the magic information. Today she was going to the inner city to see how to contact Fidlet's master, the lord named Lester, to change the huge disaster that might happen. Opening the door, opposite Soraka, a tall girl wearing an Ionian-style warrior costume had just walked out of the room. The two looked at each other, and Soraka could clearly sense the girl's vigilance, because the girl's right hand had already put on the weird shaped sickle on her waist. The gentle Soraka took the initiative to step back, and made way for the girl with a smile. This move successfully won the girl's favor, and her hand also dropped from the sickle handle. "Thank you, I'm just a little nervous in an unfamiliar environment." "It's okay, I'm glad to be able to help you." "Then, I'm leaving, please go ahead." After a polite exchange, the two of them left the corridor one after the other, in great harmony. About a minute later, the door of the room opposite Soraka was opened, and a female swordsman wearing a Heidi-style female official guard uniform turned around. "Dear little Ni, be careful not to be kidnapped, or I will have to work harder. I think it would be better for the master to focus on the right path and do more meaningful things instead of bullying a guard. Besides, are you so unconfident about the public security in the Emerald Territory that you personally established?" "I've already said my name is Liz." The woman closed the door after she finished speaking and walked out of the corridor with her weak legs. Vernus walked down the stairs holding the stair railing and glanced at the already full dining table. Before Vernus could make a decision, the hotel waitress came over with a smile. "Guest, the other tables are full, but the newly opened table over there is still short of people. Why don't you sit over there?" He looked expressionlessly in the direction pointed by the waitress. At the small table by the wall, two strange people were sitting with their eyes wide open. The girl who was a warrior was a human being after all. What was going on with the purple-skinned woman with a horn on the other side? So the species in the Emerald Territory are so rich. Don't worry, those two are both women. Of course, if it's inconvenient, you can wait a moment. I'll go there. A cup of sweet tea, 2 cheese breads and a lamb chop. Thank you. Okay, wait a moment. After taking a deep breath, Vernus straightened her numb legs and walked straight to the table by the wall and stood still. Two completely different sights were cast on her at the same time. The female warrior was alert, but the strange-looking horned woman took the initiative to greet her with a gentle face. "Her name is Huang Su, and mine is Soraka. Don't be too restrained. Take a seat. This hotel is the most affordable hotel in Zicheng district, so it is often fully booked. It is fate that the three of us can sit at the same table." Chapter 433 The Secret Cooperation Project between Jade Collar and Black Rose. The three people at the table did not have much communication, nor were they familiar enough to talk to each other. Soraka, who had always been a promissory note and almost never saved money, always liked to give money to the poor. She nibbled on the simplest black bread with water, while Huang Su tore into large pig trotters and chicken legs with big mouthfuls, looking unruly. Vernus, who was between the two, sat upright, with her body straightened, and with a serious face. She used a knife and fork borrowed from the store to cut cheese bread and grilled lamb chops on the copper plate, put the square bread cubes and lamb chops into her mouth with a fork, and chewed and swallowed with her mouth tightly closed. Her movements were particularly calm and elegant, like the demeanor of an elite aristocrat. Looking at the blonde beauty in front of her, Soraka felt like a beggar entering the city, while Huang Su felt like an Ionian starving ghost. The strange thing is that, although the movements and speed seem to be very slow, Vernus's speed of finishing the food is beyond common sense, but she has not lost her leisurely beauty. This strange illusion even made Soraka and Huang Su stop eating and pay attention to her for a few seconds. "What's wrong?" Vernus put down her knife and fork, wiped her mouth with a white towel, and asked in a strange way. Huang Su and Soraka looked at each other, but Huang Su spoke frankly. "Excuse me, are you a nobleman of a kingdom? I used to be a military nobleman, but I'm not anymore. Now I'm just a bed-warming maid." Instantly, she imagined a touching story of the daughter of a duke of a kingdom who left her homeland and suffered humiliation because her family and country were ruined. Huang Su picked up the big chicken leg again and took a bite. There were a pile of bones on the table. "Sorry, I may have mentioned something you don't want to mention. Do you need help?" Vernus looked at the enthusiastic and righteous girl warrior with some surprise and shook her head. "It doesn't matter. I'm quite satisfied with my current life and have no intention of changing it." "Okay, you decide." Seeing that Vernus had no intention of resisting, Huang Su naturally would not force herself to be a good person. After Soraka swallowed the black bread that scratched her teeth and mouth with difficulty, Venus and Huangsu had just finished eating. The three of them paid the bill, came to the door of the hotel, simply said hello and said goodbye, and then walked east at the same time. The three of them walked in the same direction at a distance of 2 or 3 meters. The atmosphere was really weird and awkward, especially after turning 3 streets. Huangsu, who was walking in the front, stopped, touched the sickle, and looked back at the 2 people behind her. "Where are you going?" "In a city," Venus said lightly, without any intention of hiding her whereabouts. "I'm not following you." "To find Lord Lester." Soraka was even more honest and terrifying, which made the other 2 women lock their eyes directly on her, and their hearts were surging like waves. Even Soraka sensed the unusual atmosphere and tilted her head, not understanding why the name Lester made the atmosphere so strange. "Why are you looking for Lester?" Venus calmly turned her body slightly to touch the sword, waiting for the opportunity, but Huangsu asked with a vigilant face. "He may bring a huge disaster. I must remind him. Are you a prophet?" Venus carefully observed the expression and movements of the spontaneous unicorn woman. She could not see any disguise or deception. If all this was pretended, it would be too terrible. But a person who took the initiative to comfort and guide herself, and was so poor that he had to eat black bread, was really a fraud with ulterior motives? Some people do call me a prophet, but I don't like this title, because a prophet can't do anything. "What kind of disaster will Lester bring?" Venus asked while Huangsu frowned and thought. Originally, she was a woman with excellent appearance and purple color. Many people on the street stopped and stood in place to look at the 3 people who were on the verge of a fight and speculated about the relationship between the 3 people. Because of this, the unusual behavior of the 3 people finally attracted the attention of the patrol soldiers. "3 ladies, do you need help?" "We are fine. This is not the place to talk." Huangsu shook her head and pulled Soraka and Venus to the alley beside under the soldiers' puzzled eyes. He winked at another colleague, and when the colleague went to gather more soldiers, the man approached the alley, but did not enter, but stood guard outside. There was only one road in the alley. In Fidlit, people would be caught as thieves if they climbed over the wall, so he was not worried that the 3 women who committed crimes would run away. He seemed to remember that there was a store belonging to the Black Rose and Emerald leader in this alley. Every time the veteran who was a generation older than him talked about this place with a wink, he always looked like "You will regret it if you don't come, and you really miss millions of gold coins." If his wife hadn't stopped him from going, he might have been there a long time ago. It's not like he hadn't speculated what kind of place with pink hearts flying around, but nightclubs are always openly opened in downtown areas. How can they do business in such a remote place? "Have you gone in?" "Already in." "Mark, have you been to the store inside?" "I've been there several times." "What kind of store is that?" Mark's complicated expression made the soldier a little crazy. "It's hard for me to describe it if you don't know." "How?" "Then it's better if you don't know." With a confident look, Huangsu pulled the 2 into a dim shop. The female mage who was sitting at the door and welcoming guests in a slit robe looked at the 3 people, from contempt to surprise, and then to the tenderness of a real parent. The woman put down her pipe, her eyes glowed green, and she greeted Venus, who was obviously a rich person. She had never met a woman who made a necklace with a flawless aquamarine the size of a thumb. She had been selling Mr. Magic crystal horn and fish skin condoms for 5 years. There was no doubt that this was a lady among rich men, a rich lady among ladies. She would believe it if she was a princess of a certain kingdom. As for the other side, Soraka, who was dressed as a beggar, and Huangsu, who was dressed as an ordinary person, were left aside. The 2 were stared at by the female mage who had become the host. For a moment, they were a little overwhelmed. "Sir, what would you like to buy? What do you sell here?" Venus's indifferent look made the female wizard realize that the woman in front of her was a big shot who had experienced wind and rain and tides. "Ha sir, please forgive me for being frank. I have everything here. Do you like large or small? Do you like the front or the back? Do you like manual or fully automatic? Hidden or for camouflage games? If you have experience in using it, I suggest you buy a fully automatic and hidden medium-sized front probe. This is the latest work that combines the confidential magic craftsmanship of the Emerald Territory. It is a perfect work designed by Master Hua himself. I guarantee that even in the downtown area, you can quietly understand the feeling of the ebb and flow of the tide. Finally realizing that she had come across a secret store selling water-attributed magic tools, Vernus was not going to buy a staff, but she also wanted to see the magic craftsmanship level of the Emerald Territory. Bring one for me to see. Chapter 434 A Mess of Interpersonal Relationships. The female wizard clerk of the Black Rose naturally did not sell real wizard staffs, but flowing water staffs that could produce water. After she demonstrated the functions to the three women were stunned. The plan to enter the inner city was forced to be interrupted. Under the contemptuous eyes of the female wizard, as if she was looking at a country bumpkin, the three people who saw Fidlet's restricted black technology walked out of the secret store with a shocked look on their faces. They happened to run into the Jade Territory spy who came to conduct a secret search. The spy did not stop the three people and let them leave. After going around in circles, they found a tavern. The wealthy Vernus directly opened a single room and took Huangsu, who had not yet recovered, and Soraka, who was dizzy, into the room. Until now, Soraka still had a pink crystal earthworm in front of her eyes, shaking its head and making a buzzing sound under the effect of magic energy. This kind of magic tool was something she had never imagined. The Jade Territory is so powerful, it is understandable that it can have such a toy, right? Huangsu sat on the table, her voice a little stuttering. Ahem. Soraka, what do you mean when you said Lester would cause a disaster? Finally coming out of the weird atmosphere, Vernus tried to calm herself down. Lester offended the Titan, and the Titan is likely to attack Leicester and this city. If a disaster really befalls this land, many people will die. There was no need to hide anything, so Soraka decided to tell the truth. I came here to try to reconcile the conflict between Leicester and the Titan. The Titan, is it the god worshipped by the Raka people near the Targon Peak? The Titan is in the Shurima continent. How could Leicester offend the Titan? When will the Titan come? Huangsu asked anxiously. The girl's concerned attitude made Soraka and Vernus more suspicious. Yes, the Titans live in the astral world above the Targon Peak. As for why Lester offended the Titans, why? I'm not sure either. I don't know when the Titans will come to Lester. But aren't you a prophet? You called me a prophet. I didn't say I was a prophet. I only saw the general result. Soraka sighed, feeling helpless and a little disappointed. And I also said that a prophet can't do anything. Only a true god can be omniscient and omnipotent. Huangsu, you seem to care about Lester? Vernus changed the subject. Do you know Lester? Knowing that there was no way to be anxious, Huangsu calmed herself down by regulating her breathing. Actually, Lester is my brother-in-law. I came to Fidlet from Ionia this time just to join my brother-in-law. Brother-in-law? And you are an Ionian? Vernus looked at Huangsu in surprise. Huangsu puffed out her chest and seemed a little proud. Of course, my brother-in-law is also the senior brother of our Langayan school. He has obtained the true secret of our master. If I show up, Sister Soraka will definitely be able to meet Lester. My brother-in-law loves me the most. Wait, shouldn't your brother-in-law love your sister the most? How can he love you the most? Vernus's expression was a little weird, and Soraka's eyes were like mosquito coils. She found that she couldn't get a word in at all. Things got out of control from the moment she held the flowing water staff. Fortunately, it seemed that with the help of Huangsu's relationship, she could make things go a little smoother. But Huangsu's expression dimmed. Because my sister is gone, and will never come back. Sorry, I made you think of bad things. Rubbing her sore eyes, Huangsu forced a smile. It's a bit complicated to say. With the help of my brother-in-law, my master got the news of the master's ancestors in the secret manual. The depressed master has cheered up. I'll leave Long Yinliu to my master and junior brother. I have nothing to do with Long Yinliu now, so I came to my brother-in-law. But you, Vernus, you seem to care about my brother-in-law too? Do you mind talking about it? Being stared at by Soraka and Huangsu, even Vernus was a little uncomfortable. She just weighed the pros and cons of telling the truth. If what Soraka said was true, it would be more convenient to go directly to Lester. After all, the Lord of the Emerald Territory is a fake, and the real Lord is tormenting himself every night. Huangzu and Lester also have a family relationship, not too close, but not too distant. Such a relationship may help Lester recover some of his past memories. In general, telling the truth is a good thing. So, under the curious gaze of the two women, Venus said lightly, "Lester is my master. He fought with me last night. He should still be in the inn now. By the way, it's the inn where you sleep. You are opposite each other, and your room is next to mine." In silence, Huangzu's mouth became bigger and bigger. Then, who is the current lord of Fidelit? I don't know, but it must be a fake. Huh. Soraka, who had never thought that the person she was looking for was next door, rolled her eyes and fell on her back on the bed. Surprised, Huangzu stepped forward and held Venus's shoulders. "I don't believe it. Take me there. I want to see if it's my brother-in-law." So, Huangzu and Venus carried the dizzy Soraka out of the tavern like the left and right protectors. This scene happened to be seen by the Emerald Territory spy. It seems that these two people may be human traffickers. Follow them and see where they are going to take the victim. Then, the spy returned to the place where he started investigating. "Isn't this right? Are they sick, or are we sick? Knock knock knock, master. It's me. I'm coming." Lester opened the door and took a blank look. The violet woman with a horn was holding a staff nervously, while the girl in strange warrior clothes and a sickle on her waist looked at him strangely and hesitantly. The man rubbed his eyes and closed the door again. "I'm not awake yet. It seems I need to make up for my sleep." Knock knock knock, open the door. Lester rolled his eyes when he opened the door again. "Zhao, you went out and brought back two women. I didn't ask you to help me find a special waiter, did I? Come in and talk first. Hey, do you still see me as your master? Hello, excuse me. Don't you remember me? I don't even remember myself. Who are you? Why should I remember you?" Seeing Venus taking people to the room by herself, Lester closed the door speechlessly. Because there were no extra chairs, the three women could only sit on the edge of the bed, completely occupying the bed. The man with his hands on his hips and wearing only shorts sighed. "So, what is going on?" Chapter 435, The Last Chance. "So, I'm your brother-in-law, and you're here to be the peacemaker, am I right?" Under the man's suspicious gaze, Huangzu did not reveal the deeper forbidden relationship between her and Lester. Without knowing what had happened to her brother-in-law, this relationship was the most appropriate, neither awkward nor too unfamiliar. She was sure that the man in front of her was her brother-in-law, but his appearance and temperament were completely different from before, like another person. However, now was not the time to explore. There was another more important thing to figure out. "I see the disaster you are about to suffer, Lester. You, Soraka, right? Don't say those useless words. How can you be a peacemaker? If I'm not wrong, the Protoss has set its sights on Mishap, and Mishap is my woman. Do you want me to give my woman to you?" Seeing that there was no place for him to sit, Lester sat directly on Venus's elastic and voluptuous thighs, with his hands on his chest and a sneer on his face. This set of actions made Huangzu stunned. She had never seen her sister and Lester get along, but she was still a little surprised by the openness in front of her. Staring at the one-horned woman with gentle eyebrows and eyes in front of him, Lester did not give her any good temper. Fortunately, Yang Ling came to inform him in advance, otherwise he really couldn't be sure who his real enemy was. Soraka did not care about the man's somewhat dissatisfied tone, and seemed very patient. "Lester, actually the Titans are not evil. They are just focused on the areas they control, and sometimes ignore the feelings of mortals. The conflict between you and the Titan of Justice is not unsolvable. How to resolve it? Can you make the Titan of Justice give up Mishap? I can talk to him and try to find a solution to the conflict between you and him. At least the people of the Emerald Territory will not suffer. Will the High Gods care about the ants on the ground? I don't think so. Who knows if you are taking sides? If you are willing to talk, then I will go to the Star Spirit of Justice to talk about this. I just want to help you. Every conflict between the extraordinary people will cause huge scars on the earth, and it is always the innocent people who are hurt. The only thing I can't sit idly by." Holding the crescent staff tightly, Soraka's expression was very serious. The man also saw determination in Soraka's golden eyes, and his tone softened a little. "You know what? The easiest people to get hurt in this world are good people, and it's the hardest to be a good person. I don't want to be a good person, I just want to do something I can do. Since you said so, I'm willing to talk to the giant god of justice. After the conversation, Soraka returned to her room, and Vernus took the initiative to walk out, leaving the space to Huangsu and Lester. Brother-in-law, do you really not remember anything? I'm not your brother-in-law, my name is Lester, do you understand? If you understand, tell me the story of you and Lester, I can be a listener. Even if you have lost your memory, you like to use the name Lester. It seems that it is you. You are my brother-in-law. Is Lester an idiot? Can you come up with a fake name? Brother-in-law, you are scolding yourself. In the dead of night, Soraka left the inn with the crescent staff and came to the lakeside. Although she has fallen from the astral world to the mortal world, Soraka still retains a weak connection with the astral world and maintains a good relationship with many star spirits. As the crescent staff began to glow, spiritual power descended from the starry sky, floating on the lake in the form of a ball of light with a flame-like spirit body, slowly approaching the serious-looking one-horned woman. It's rare that you would take the initiative to find me, my friend. Astral language translation. The following is omitted. I just want to understand. Can you let go? Mankind has suffered enough. Soraka held the staff with both hands, her voice a little low. Hearing Soraka's words, the ball of light began to burn. The suffering endured by mankind stems from their own rebellion and greed. You should understand, Soraka. I have looked through the mortal world for thousands of years, and I cannot find a completely righteous person on earth. The only righteous person is you, my friend. You are the only one who has never committed a crime. In this world, only the children of the stars are qualified to enjoy peace and joy, but you chose to fall into the mortal world, to suffer for the filthy people. My friend, we all know how much betrayal and malice you have suffered when you redeemed others. This world has been full of filth since the birth of mankind. The unclean deserve to suffer, and any retribution must be fulfilled. This is the bitter fruit they have brewed themselves, and no one can change it. But what crime did Mishab and the others commit? Those chosen by God will receive eternal glory. Under justice, the innocent can be chosen. Soraka, whether it is Misira or Kale, they are destined to embark on the path of cleansing filth and implementing justice. I have given them abilities and immortality. They should become the messengers of justice, and must not disobey me. There are still many foreign enemies and demons in the astral realm. We are not the most powerful, but we cannot escape. We need messengers of justice to fight against them. Protecting the mortal world is our responsibility as well as the responsibility of mortals. If the mortal world is destroyed, everything will fall into death. What meaning do the suffering and joy you worry about have for the dead? Soraka lowered her head. The one-horned woman holding the staff felt a little lost. She knew that in a sense, what Justice said was true. Seeing that Soraka was a little sad, the violently burning white flame light ball also subsided. Soraka, since we are protecting this world, the people in this world should be used by us. This is an immutable principle. Since the birth of the starry universe, the world has had its destiny. Letting slaves be the masters is tantamount to letting the world collapse. How can dogs be masters and people be dogs? If that day really comes, the world will surely be destroyed. We have given mortals enough freedom, and mortals should offer respect. Even if they do not show respect, they should not be disrespectful. Lester, as a variable outside the mortal world, has never shown, or to us, since he entered the world. He has offended us many times, and should be judged. Then, can you let the others go? The other people in the Emerald Territory are innocent, and should not be affected by this matter. After a moment of silence, the ball of light continued to convey the spiritual words. Since you have been nurtured and blessed by the Emerald Territory, there will be no more wrongful deaths among the people of the Emerald Territory. However, if Lester is willing to plead guilty and be branded, the Emerald Territory can be spared from the catastrophe. Since you came to me in person, I'm willing to give Lester one last chance. If you surrender, I will give Lester a fair trial, and at least save his life. All choices are in Lester's hands. Whether he lives or dies, and whether the Emerald Territory survives or perishes, all depends on him. The ball of light had disappeared above the lake, and the frightened fish, night insects and flying birds fled in all directions. The lakeside was as silent as a ghost town. The one-horned woman sat down slowly in silence and buried her head in her thighs. The prophet can't do anything. Chapter 436 Followers of the God of Justice. God is a raging fire. His wrath is coming, and the end of the Emerald Territory is approaching. I heard the voice of God. God's messenger is coming soon. Repent quickly. Only the devout will not be condemned, and sinners will be buried in the lake of sulfur and fire. It's Lord Lester. He has committed a great sin. He has angered God. The Emerald Territory should not have sent troops to invade other countries. We should all repent. Margaret and Alice, who led the troops to cause killing, are both tyrants who should be condemned. In addition to disaster, what else have they brought us? The commander of the Legion should be General Apsil, the true patron saint of the Emerald Territory. The Emerald Territory should have been a stable and peaceful territory. We shouldn't have started a war. Look, how many people have lost their husbands and sons. We should seriously consider the future of the Emerald Territory. The guardians of the Nokmachi Plains should not be the barbarians of Naxos. Those barbarians only know how to kill and destroy. God's messenger is coming. He's coming soon. His name is Simond, and he shoulders a duty of judgment. I don't know when it started, but rumors of all kinds began to spread among the people of Emerald Territory. Although most people scoffed at it and regarded it as the nonsense of a group of imaginary lunatics and chose to stay away from it, the subsequent military mobilization and martial law made most people realize that this matter seemed not so simple. Especially after some rumors were gradually confirmed, more and more people fell into anxiety, violence, and crime began to increase significantly, and the monsters in the darkness poked their heads out. Everyone wanted to sew their mouths shut and make themselves dumb. Taking advantage of this restlessness, undercurrents that had long been dissatisfied with Naxos began to move. There were Mombia people who wanted to restore Naxmachi and drive away all Naxans, and there were secret organizations of other countries and forces who wanted to seek their own interests in this turmoil. There were even organized groups that wanted to subvert Emerald Territory, a powerful independent territory, a country within a country, that posed a threat to all forces. In the inner city of Fidlit, the government hall, in the heavily guarded confidential room, Apsil, the general of the Fidlit city guards and the commander of the Shadow Crossbowmen, who is almost 40 years old, is sitting on a leather sofa with a frown on his face. The middle-aged man is sitting opposite the Emerald Archon Herald, who is old and wrinkled. On the table between them are a lot of hot and headache-inducing intelligence. The most terrifying thing is the secret letter sent by the Night's Edge. Apsil, who was being roasted by some people with ulterior motives, was not afraid of being accused of communicating with the restorers of Mombia, because his loyalty had always been beyond doubt. As long as the Lord of Emerald Territory and Margaret believed in him, he would never be in any danger. Moreover, in order to prove that he had nothing to do with the restorers, he took the initiative to capture some of the surface Mombia people and put them in the dungeon. Anyone who was not a fool could understand that such a cheap trick was useless to him, and it was even more impossible to threaten his family. He had already moved his family to the fortress castle in the inner city, which was considered both a hostage and a trust. This was the supreme privilege of the Emerald Territory's dignitaries. Everyone in the fortress would be unconditionally protected by the Night's Edge. No one was willing to try to kidnap or rebel in the Night's Edge's lair unless they wanted to experience a feeling worse than death. The Holy General of the Restoration of Mombia, the goddess of darkness church that worships evil gods and likes to conduct dark sacrifices, or the Blade Envoy, or thief organization composed of low-level people, are all minor problems. The Edge of the Night has already mastered most of the information about these minions, and can eliminate the threat through violent suppression or assassination at any time. There is nothing to be afraid of. If other rumors can be eliminated through appeasement and suppression, the information sent by the Edge of the Night really makes Apsil's scalp numb. This is a problem that the group of perverts of the Edge of the Night cannot solve. A man named Simon started by boat from a border village and traveled westward along the Black Iron River towards Fidlit. With a body of 2.5 meters, he had the strength of a titan who could easily lift a large ship. He healed hundreds of wounded people along the way, made bones grow flesh, enabled the lame to walk, and the blind to see. The original few followers have expanded to thousands of followers, more than half of whom are believers who have received healing miracles. This group of believers began to believe in the so-called God of Justice and advocated the trial of Lord Leicester, the instigator of the unjust war. I have to say, all this is really too crazy. Apsal sighed, put down his right hand, and tapped the letter. The problem now is that Lord Leicester has disappeared, and the main force of the Emerald Territory has been taken away by General Margaret and General Alice. If we want to forcibly kill the so-called God's messenger, it may be difficult to do this with the extraordinary power of the Emerald Territory alone. At present, only Lady Sinner has the hope of defeating this so-called God's messenger, and Lady Sinner happens to play the role of the Lord at the moment. Once Lady Sinner is defeated and something unexpected happens, then the Emerald Territory is finished. The Lord has no offspring. No matter who is in power, the Emerald Territory will fall apart. Harold made a brief summary in a hoarse and dry voice. Yes, the forces that want to subvert the Emerald Territory will definitely not miss this opportunity, so we are in big trouble. After a silence for a while, Harold whispered, the key is that Simon's power is unknown. If he is really the so-called messenger of judgment sent by the gods, then his strength is definitely enough to deal with the Emerald Territory. General Apsal, I'm afraid we can't do anything. Only Lady Sinner can make the final decision on this matter. You are right, so I decided to eradicate those idiots who are ready to make a move before Simond arrives. Unfortunately, the leader of the Mombia Restorers has a little relationship with you. This is also the main reason why I asked you to come. If I didn't understand your loyalty, I'm afraid I would think that you are manipulating the rebels behind the scenes. Really? I'm used to it. That's why the Nightblade always pays attention to you. Thank God they didn't cut me. At the same time, in the underground fortress of the Shimmering Silver Mountains, Mishap, who was not yet ready to officially appear, was wiping the fire rune blade. The next moment, Sinner, wearing a magic steel mask, pushed the door in. Sister, we are in trouble. What trouble could be more serious than the Lord of Emerald Territory disappearing for no reason? Miss Ha smiled bitterly and put down the fire rune blade on the table, watching her sister put a secret letter in front of her. This is the news that Morris just sent. Sister, take a look. If I'm not mistaken, this is a visitor from heaven. Chapter 437 Star and Fire. Eager to be witnesses of the miracle, thousands of people followed the tall messenger of God in their own way and came to the outside of Fidlit. Thanks to the blessing of the messenger of God, the thousands of people on the boat did not feel hungry or tired. This made more people believe that the gods were watching this land and the messengers of God who had the power to perform miracles. Silent pressure soon enveloped the area east of Fidlit. A large number of shadow crossbowmen marched out of the city and stood opposite to the indifferent Simond and his followers on the other side. Looking down from the sky, the size of the 5,000-man army was actually comparable to the followers behind Simond. Swords were unsheathed, crossbows were strung, and a centurion on horseback approached Simond and others with a solemn face. However, when the horse was less than 50 meters away from Simond, it let out a terrified neigh, and the next second it fell heavily to the ground with its hooves turned over, and took its last breath. Getting up from the ground in a panic, the centurion thought that it was the messenger of God who did it. He suppressed his fear, and continued to move forward with gritted teeth. He came to the so-called messenger of God, and stood in front of him. With weak legs, the centurion peeked at the tall and strong man, then turned to look at the followers of the messenger of God and shouted, "What do you want to do? Do you want to rebel? Have you forgotten who brought you the good life now?" Under the questioning of the centurion, an old man stood up. "Sir, we have not forgotten who founded the great Emerald Territory. We are just eager to witness more miracles, because the one in front of you is the real messenger of God. I used to be a cripple, and it was the messenger of God who healed my right leg, so that I could walk. We are just witnesses, and are not going to do anything." Others also echoed the old man's words. The centurion turned back with some embarrassment at the old man's excuse. Seeing that Apsal shook his head, he gritted his teeth and continued, "You are rebelling. Those who leave now are innocent. Don't blame me for not saying this beforehand." Before he finished speaking, a big hand covered the centurion's head from the sky, and the giant god's messenger made a spiritual voice that everyone could hear. "Submit your soul to the God of justice for judgment. The filthy will eventually be cleansed by the fire, while the innocent will be healed and comforted." The god's right palm shot out more than a dozen light blue threads that pierced into the centurion's body, and the whole body began to flash with a faint blue light. Unclean people, bury here, you deserve this sin. As if the sound of judgment, the centurion's body was naturally burned by the holy blue flame from the inside out. The man let out a painful wail from his soul, trying to escape Simon's control. The man turned around and crawled a few steps, but could only fall to the ground powerlessly, allowing his body to be burned and devoured by the ice blue soul flames, and became a charred skeleton in the blue ashes. He's an enemy. Shoot. Without hesitation, Apsil gave the order to attack. On the other side, dozens of Black Rose mages on the wall looked back with fear and looked at Meredith, some hesitating whether to launch an attack. In just a few seconds, the Black Rose mages sensed the terrible power contained in the body of the god's messenger. This was not an enemy they could contend with. Don't forget who gave you the power and wealth you have now, and don't forget what oath you made when you embarked on the path of mages. There have never been cowards in the Black Rose, not now, and not in the future. Show all your abilities. After saying this coldly, Meredith raised his staff and began to cast magic. The ashamed mages finally abandoned the fear brought by the different levels of life and began to release the most powerful magic they had mastered. Looking at the rain of arrows and the magical light that filled the sky across the sky shooting at themselves and others, someone behind Simon finally realized the seriousness of the matter and realized that they were involved in the war. Fear struck, and some people began to run away. The followers of God will not be harmed. The spiritual voice made the people who wanted to escape determined and stopped. Simon raised his hands high, and a huge light blue shield covered thousands of followers. No matter whether it was a rain of arrows or violent magic, after touching the shield, it could only bring out ripples like ripples and disappeared directly. The terrible attack like a storm could not shake the shield at all. The followers burst into violent cheers. Simon, who blocked the attack, did not launch an attack, but stood in place, as if waiting for something. Cinna, disguised as Lester, stood on the inner wall tower wearing a mask. Even Morris could not see the woman's expression. Besides Cinna, Mishap, who was covered in a cloak, frowned and looked at the conflict outside the city. As if feeling something, Simon suddenly looked up at the tower and met Mishap's eyes. The Starlink was forcibly established in the blink of an eye, and the man's indifferent voice appeared in Mishap's ears. Kyle, the wrath of the God of Justice is not something that ordinary people can stop. The Emerald Territory is about to be destroyed. If you are willing to return to the Star Realm, the Emerald Territory can avoid this disaster. This is the result of Lady Missira's plea. What if I say no? Then hand over Lester and let Lester be judged by the God of Justice. After hesitating for a moment, Mishap responded. But Lester is not here. It doesn't matter who Lester is. What matters is that Lester must be judged. The choice is yours. If there is no result by sunset, the Emerald Territory will be destroyed. The link was forcibly established and then forcibly cut off in the blink of an eye. Just from this move, Mishap knew that she would never be a match for the tall bald man. Mishap looked at her sister beside her. The sister wearing a mask was Lester at the moment, which meant that, if she didn't go, her sister would have to be judged. Whether it was the real Lester or her sister who was judged, it was not the result Mishap wanted to see. Sister, do you think we can defeat him? Not us, but me, Hina. You are more important to the Emerald Territory than me now. Mishap put down her hood and embraced her sister with open arms. The future was uncertain. She knew that this might be the last time she said goodbye to her dear sister. I can defeat him. You just wait here for him to come back and take good care of Dad. Sister, take this sword with you. Stars and fire are originally one. What's more, Brother Lester said that this sword was originally left for you by those people. Mishap looked at the star blade handed over by her sister with some surprise. She knew how much her sister loved this magic sword, but at this moment, her sister handed it to her without hesitation. Even though she was reluctant, Mishap knew that she would have to solve this matter sooner or later. It was the best ending for her to go to the Star Realm alone. Mishap held two divine swords in her hands, one on the left and one on the right, and slowly approached. As if sensing Mishap's will, the Star Rune Blade and the Fire Rune Blade merged into one in the divine light and changed from a slender rapier to a broadsword. The power of the Starfire flowed through it, and the Starfire Rune Blade returned to its original appearance. Zina, never give up hope in life at any time, and take care of yourself. Taking off her cloak, white and holy wings spread from her back, and Mishap, holding the Starfire rune blade, flew into the sky. Sister, be careful. Zina blurted out with some distress, and the woman in the sky turned around and smiled. Don't worry, I'll be back soon. Judging from the background data, this book is finished. I just want to know if anyone still reads this book. Readers who have read it, please raise your paw so I can see. If no one reads it, I will cut it. The standalone version can't stand it anymore. If the subscription drops again, I can't even keep the full attendance standard. Chapter 438 God's Decision. All attacks were ineffective. No physical or magical attack could really hurt the thin shield. The roles were reversed. The morale of the soldiers and mages of the Emerald Territory plummeted, while those who were protected by Summoned in the Shield admired Summoned even more. When the sun began to set, the arrows of the Shadow Crossbowmen had been used up, and Apsil had to give the order to stop the attack. Looking back and taking in the depressed and uneasy expressions of the soldiers, Apsil's heart was stained with a layer of haze. He considered that the enemy would be very powerful, but he did not expect that just standing there and defending motionlessly could defeat the elite Emerald Territory Corps. The gap in strength between mortals and extraordinary people can no longer be erased in any way. It can be said to be hopeless. There is no doubt that the giant in front of him is a messenger from heaven, targeting the Emerald Territory. Lord Summoned, how long do we have to wait here? Lord God's messenger, how many more miracles will you perform? God, how can I become your most devout believer? For this, I'm willing to give everything. Various questions and prayers came from behind him, but Summoned closed his eyes and waited for the arrival of the judgment moment, as if he did not hear them. The judgment moment, he decided, was not of his own will, but because his blood power would exert a stronger power at night. His master allowed him to take action only at night. Not only fight lit, but when the stars descended, the entire Emerald Territory could become a target of attack, and everyone could die, except for Kyle and Morgana, who were appointed by the master. He knew that the power in his body at this moment was enough to wipe out the entire fight lit, but the price of this power was a bit too high. He was 2 meters and 5 meters tall, as majestic as a middle-aged man. In fact, until today, he was only 13 years old, and he himself did not know what price he paid to become like this. Before he fell asleep, he was a skinny guy less than 1.3 meters tall. After waking up, he became an almighty master who controlled the power of star dragons and titans. All of this was brought to him by his former master, and his piety was exchanged for another master. He was just a tool from beginning to end. He had accepted his fate. The control mark on his soul left him no choice. Summoned looked up at the sky, as if he could see the gods above the horizon through the clouds. In fact, there were indeed 6 star spirits in the sky above Fidlit, watching the Emerald Territory, which was about to undergo a huge change. This number surprised the star spirits themselves. It was agreed to play Mahjong, but now you can open 2 tables of Landlord. I thought it was a surprise that Diana and Liang came here. Why are you joining in the fun of war instead of fighting properly? The female incarnation of the curious star spirit rolled her eyes charmingly, which made Panson almost unable to hold back from sticking his magic gun into the woman's mouth and pumping repeatedly. If he was not mistaken, the woman in front of him seemed to have extra parts on her body, which made the woman become a person who was neither male nor female. Tretters, you are a good old thing. When did you become a sissy? You define other people's gender at will, which seems to be impolite. The curious star spirit smiled and puffed out his chest. Can't a man have a proud figure? Isn't your female incarnation the same as a man? I don't discriminate against you, by the way. Do you want to try to be intimate with me? It's not a good thing to always fight and not know how to relax. I have good skills. Panson, the war star spirit, rolled his eyes and took 2 steps back to look at the beautiful blonde goddess who turned into Misura. The woman was the Justice Star Spirit. Pervert, you turned yourself gay and played with yourself. Gassis, is that angel with divine blood the vessel you chose? What's her name? Why is her soul so brilliant? Yes, her divine name is Kale. Her resurrection from the dead gave Kale transcendental power. Only such a tenacious soul can withstand the stronger infusion of divine power. I still think that pure natural humans are more suitable as carriers of divinity. Faith and will are far greater than body and soul. The masculine blonde man who spoke had a tall and strong physique. He shone like sunlight in the air. It was like he had a strong searchlight. The man was emitting scorching flames all the time. Liang, please reduce your light pollution. I can't see the ground clearly. The silver-haired man, who was as feminine as moonlight, wore a gorgeous grey battle skirt. The man had a more beautiful face than a woman. His cold voice made the blonde man a little embarrassed. Sorry, Jiao, are you feeling better now? Liang Star Spirit put away the divine domain that was unconsciously scattered. Yeah. Okay, everyone, what I want to say is, do we really want to destroy Fidelit? This is a gathering place that little Lele has built with great difficulty. Wouldn't it be a pity to destroy it like this? Can they really pose a threat to me? It's great to watch the little people create all kinds of interesting things every day. It's a pity to destroy it like this, right? Twilight Star Spirit Zoe sat on the colorful bubbles, her little face looking worried, and Curious Star Spirit Triple smiled. Zoe, you've seen a lot of men every day, right? You won't really fall in love with that mortal from another world, right? There have been similar people before, and there are many excellent ones among them. I don't think you care so much. Little Lele is different from others. How should I put it? Zoe shook her white legs, her cheeks flushed, her hands clasped in front of her chest, and her thoughts began to wander. He is handsome, humorous, interesting, and full of justice. Most mortals are boring guys. It is rare to find such an interesting human as little Lele. It would be a pity for him to die, right? Soraka has already pleaded for Lester. If Kayla's willing to return to the astral world, Lester and the Emerald Territory will naturally be fine. Letting Lester become a pathfinder to explore Runeland is the most suitable choice, provided that he is willing to obey and become one of ours. Justice looked at Trittles indifferently, while Trittles shrugged. Two waves of heat surged, causing Pantheon, Diana, and Liang Star Spirit to turn their heads away involuntarily to avoid vomiting. Originally beautiful things always seem to become uncomfortable things after being touched by the Curious Star Spirit. And the Curious Star Spirit is still hinting at something. Missira, why are you looking at me? Do you want to try with me? If we take out that thing, we should be able to make least at one of ours. That thing is still in the experimental stage, and the people who have used it don't seem to have a very good ending. It doesn't matter, least it has mastered the runes, and he is the most suitable user. He won't die, and his growing power will be suppressed, allowing him to remain at the level of mortal, so that he can do a lot for us. That, I still think. Justice looked at the reluctant Twilight Astral. Zoe, by then least it can be your dog. Yeah, I don't actually have any objection. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 439 Dusk Glow. No one thought that the rumored dead Seraphim Mishap was still alive, and no one expected that Mishap, who fell from the sky, appeared directly on the battlefield. The morale of the soldiers of the Emerald Territory began to rise. It seems that you have made a choice. Simon calmly glanced at the Starfire rune blade in the angel's hand, and removed the shield that had lost its meaning. No matter who you are, no matter where you come from, the Emerald Territory is not a place where you can run wild. If you kill the people of the Emerald Territory, don't even think about leaving. Looking down at Simon from above, Mishap, holding the Starfire rune blade high, began to mobilize divine power. Two wings burned violently, and two wings grew on her back again in the flames, turning into a four-winged angel. How can the power of God be blasphemed by mortals? Even you are not qualified. The giant pressed down his hands, and his body began to float up in the illusory blue light. He actually flew up, always keeping the same height as Mishap. The two soon became two small black dots in the sight of everyone and disappeared again. Let your strength speak for itself. Above the clouds, Mishap rushed towards Simon like lightning, swinging her sword and slashing it. The sword energy composed of divine power and flames flew out of the blade and slashed at Simon's star energy shield in a ripple-like manner, but was blocked by the light blue shield. Seeing that her attack did not cause any damage to Simond, Miss Ha swung her sword faster and faster, and the endless sword energy formed a wave of flames that surged towards Simond. The violent power of the holy flame finally put some pressure on the giant. You don't understand what your rebellion means at all. The runes on the surface of his body glowed, and Simond disappeared out of thin air. The next second, he appeared behind the angel, clenching his right fist, and the titan body strengthened by the power of the star dragon slammed Miss Ha's back hard, causing Miss Ha, who had no time to defend herself, to spit out a mouthful of golden sticky blood and tumbled out. You don't understand how deep the grace and mercy you have received. His body disappeared again, and Simond teleported in front of Miss Ha. With a rising dragon punch, he hid Miss Ha higher in the sky. Miss Ha, who was not experienced in combat, was completely suppressed by Simond, who was stronger in strength. The combination of the blood of the titans and the star dragons was far better than the blessing of the divine power of the star spirits. Coming to the seriously injured angel, like a human grabbing a puppy, Simond raised his right hand to pinch the woman's neck, and held it high. His indifferent expression gradually became indifferent. You can't even defeat me, so what right do you have to resist? Beauty and nobility were gone. Miss Ha, with disheveled hair and scars all over her body, disdainfully spat a mouthful of blood on Simond's face and swung her sword at the giant's arm. You don't know what you can do. He wanted to tear the woman in front of him to pieces, but his body was unable to control himself. In anger, Simond waved his hand and threw the woman to the ground. His body flashed and disappeared, and he returned to the ground. He could no longer attack the woman in front of him, because the master who controlled his soul had given an order. He was just a tool, and had to obey. Seeing that Simond had returned, Absol looked up blankly. A burning stream of light streaked across the sky and hit the ground hard. Looking closely, the man found that the falling object in the pit was Miss Ha. 2 wings were broken, and the sword fell to the side. The angel lying on the ground was in a worse condition than expected. Lose it already? I thought it would take a long time to fight, at least to be evenly matched. Until this moment, Absol still couldn't imagine that the gap between the two sides was so big. If the angels couldn't defeat such an enemy, then who else in the Emerald Territory could defeat the other side? Looking up at the blood-red setting sun in the sky, Simond's voice reached everyone's ears, sentencing everyone to death. The wrath of God is a raging fire. Lester has committed the great sin of blasphemy and deserves to be judged. Fidlet is a place of sin and deserves to be purified. The day of judgment has come. Only the righteous can be reborn in the flames. Repent, sinners of Fidlet, repent for your evil deeds and sins. Hope was completely gone. The residents of the whole city fell into despair and madness. Riots broke out in many places in the outer city. Smoke rose everywhere. Crazy mobs began to attack people around them, pouring out the most primitive malice of mankind. When death was about to come, the beasts in people's hearts were finally released. Fortunately, there were still dedicated Black Iron Guards to maintain the last order, which prevented the whole city from falling into the sea of fire. Even so, the outer city was like a bandit entering the country, and fires were burning everywhere. In the fortress of the inner city, Kiram and Kisali sat side by the window, holding hands, facing the sunset in the sky. Are you still worried about Miss Ha and Sinner? Feeling the warmth from the woman's palm, Zerum smiled with difficulty, his face a little bitter. A little bit, although Sinner always comforts me that everything is fine, but I always have a feeling that the enemy coming this time seems to be related to the heaven where Miss Ira is, and Lester is missing again. I always feel that if Lester is here, all the troubles can be solved, but this time it is a messenger sent by the gods after all. Even if Lester is here, he may not be able to deal with it, right? I was thinking, if my 2 daughters and I did not come to Emerald Territory, but went to Demacia, would Emerald Territory be able to avoid such a disaster? Or even, could we avoid the gaze of those gods? Kisali stared at the middle-aged man in front of him who had completely let go of his ex-wife, and shook her head gently. Your choice is not wrong. You can't always protect Miss Ha and Sinner. They have their own paths to follow. If it is really their mother who is always watching them, then even if you are not in the Emerald Territory, it will still bring disaster to the place where you are, even the city-state of Demacia where magic is forbidden. Is that so? Kiram's wavering look made Kisali feel very cute, and the woman smiled playfully. You have always doubted yourself over the years, but you don't know that you have done well enough as an ordinary person. The future of this world is always in the hands of those extraordinary people. Ms. Rose's face flashed by, and Kisley spoke of her life experience. For ordinary people like us, we either obey or perish. We can't do anything. Even if we unite all the humans on the Valoran continent, we can't defeat a strong man who masters the power of God. This is the cruelest place in the world, but also the most beautiful place. If the strong are unwilling to make changes, then the world will not make any changes. Then do we really have no third way to go? Staring at the last ray of sunset in the western Urus mountains, Kisley's voice was like the evening breeze. Yes, if this world has its own hero, then this hero will definitely prevent the disaster from happening. Chapter 440 The Messenger of God in the Blasphemer. At the east gate of Fidlit, Cinna, disguised as Lester, was walking silently out of the city. Morris followed Cinna and asked softly, "Master, have you really made a decision?" "Well, everything is up to you. Even if Fidlit is destroyed, at least some sparks must be preserved. Brother Lester told me that he will come back one day. Although I'm weak and cannot protect the Emerald Territory, I must leave Brother Lester with the possibility of a comeback. The Goral Mountains are our last hope. As long as we are alive, this war between humans and gods will not stop, and hatred will drive us to do more things." Cinna turned around, and Morris quickly knelt on one knee, but was gently pulled up by Cinna. "Uncle Morris, you have watched me grow up since I was a child. You are also the most loyal subordinate selected by Brother Lester. You are the person I trust the most. I can only rely on you now. Master, I will delay as much time as possible and do it according to the plan. I'm afraid that, even if Lester is judged, the lackers of God will not stop." Watching Cinna leave, Morris clenched his fists and turned around. Hector, Dimust, and Edist appeared from the corner of the street and gathered around Morris. Except for Northals, who was still a housemaid in Demacia, the first generation of Nightblade assassins selected by Lester gathered again, handing 3 different secret letters and the Emerald Territory power badge to the 3 people. Morris lowered his voice. "Old friends, time is running out. I really hope we can meet again one day." In the operation of the Nightblade Assassin, all the soldiers and generals who were still in charge of public security were forcibly recruited. The important talents and families of the dignitaries in the South District War Workshop, including Karam and Kisley in the fortress, all got on the carriage heading south, preparing to go to the southern coast of the continent through the shimmering Silver Mountains for refuge. Another group of important craftsmen went north under the arrangement of the Nightblade Assassin, preparing to go to the Atlan ruins under the Goral Mountains to build a new base. As for the other people in the Emerald Territory, who were still worried in the room, Cinna could no longer do more. If the gods insisted on erasing everything, then no matter how much effort they put in, it would be useless. It was simply impossible to evacuate the population of more than 100,000 people in Fidlit. Cinna could only do what she could. Walking out of the city gate silently, everyone was attracted by the messenger Simond. Just as Cinna was about to announce her presence, she was blocked by a sudden hand and forcibly pulled to the corner of the gate. Cinna, who was mobilizing her divine power to fight back, had not yet started to move when a familiar yet unfamiliar voice came to her ears. "This is my business, don't interfere. Let them explain the rest. Nod when you understand." Cinna stared at the familiar man who held her hostage. Except for his grayish-white skin color, rune-like black tattoos on both sides of his cheeks and teardrop moles at the corners of his eyes, the man looked exactly like Lester. Soon Cinna's shock turned into surprise. Glancing at the 3 women with different styles, Cinna nodded vigorously. "Very good." Cinna, who was released by the man, took off her mask and was about to hug the man in front of her, but was pushed away by the man holding her shoulders. The black-haired woman was stunned. She was seriously hurt by this simple act. "I'm Lester, not Lester. Don't get close to me. I'm not used to hugging strangers." But, Vernis, stop her. Yes. Seeing the man was about to leave, the confused Cinna wanted to follow him, but was stopped by Vernis. "The master has made his own choice. Let him go. As for his amnesia, we will tell you slowly. Let me introduce myself briefly. Her name is Soraka, a prophet from Shurima, and she is a warrior from Ionia, named Huangsu. I'm the Master's Maiden Guard from the North Sea. You can call me Vernus. Brother Lester, what happened to him? What does amnesia mean? Vernus sighed. It's a long story. Get out of the way. Don't block the way. Lester pushed aside the bewildered soldier in front of him and walked forward. The shadow crossbowmen on both sides seemed to recognize the identity of the person coming. Although they were a little confused, they still took the initiative to make way for the person who looked like he was not easy to mess with. Noticing the commotion behind him, Apsa, who was in a dilemma, turned around and saw a man he had never expected. Lord, yeah. Not knowing the general in front of him who looked surprised, Lester waved his hand and was not going to say anything more, but he saw Apsa kneeling on one knee, supporting the hilt with his left hand and clenching his right fist in front of his chest. From the actions of the Legion commander, the soldiers who rarely saw Lester's true appearance also completely confirmed the identity of the person coming and saluted one after another. Lord. Being a little annoyed by such a scene, Lester was too lazy to pay attention and walked away from Apsa. The man chose to continue forward and approach the dangerous big bald man. When Lester came to a position about 10 meters in front of Simond, the last ray of light disappeared on the other side of the mountain and the sky darkened. Lester, are you ready to be judged? Seeing Lester, Simond, who was a little surprised, had to stop his move to attack Fidlet. You are a motherless child who looks like a boiled egg. Who do you want to judge? The beautiful words echoed in the air, and both Simond and the soldiers of the Emerald Territory were a little overwhelmed. Is there something wrong with this, Lord? While Simond was choked and unable to speak, Lester jumped directly into the deep pit. The blonde woman was still in a coma like a swan covered with wounds. When he came to the woman, Lester grabbed the woman's hand and began to input life energy. After finally suppressing the evil fire in his heart, Simond, who was ready to take action, did not intend to waste time, but was intervened by the master again. Let him treat Kyle, and do not interfere. Lester, who got more time, quickly recovered some of Miss Ha's injuries. The woman opened her eyes, stared blankly at the expressionless man in front of her, and murmured, Lester, I'm glad you woke up. Lester let go of Miss Ha's hand, and turned away without hesitation. His cold attitude made the woman's heart ache. She had nowhere to vent her grievances. At this moment, she couldn't help but think of what her mother Misilla said to her when she was still asleep. Does he really understand this man? The other half jumped out of the deep pit. Lester stretched his muscles and stared at Simond coldly. You judge this and that every day. Haha, you can't even be a man. Are you happy to be a dog for others? You're looking for death. Chapter 441 Taboo Spell, Soul Strengthening. Leave here if you don't want to die. Before they really started, a suffocating magic storm began to stir in the center of the battlefield. The distribution of element in the material realm was easily torn apart by the terrible energy. Seeing that the so-called witnesses of miracles on the opposite side had already run away, Apsa gritted his teeth and issued an order to retreat. Thousands of soldiers retreated into the city one after another. Staying here would not only be useless, but would become a burden. Maintain the law and order of the outer city, suppress riots, and stay away from the battlefield. The city gates closed, and Hector appeared from the dark and revealed his identity to Apsa, while Cinna, who was hiding in the stone tower, looked at the terrible battlefield in the distance and listened to Vernus's story. He destroyed the North Sea Fortress and Ed City alone. Hundreds of thousands of people in the two cities died at his hands. I'm one of the few survivors. He didn't kill me, so I followed him. Then how did he lose his memory? And what's the matter with that look? To Hina's surprise, the one who answered this time was not Vernus, but Soraka, who had a single horn and violet skin. Although it was the first time they met, Hina always felt that the woman in front of her could be trusted. The one-horned star spirit leaned the crescent staff against the wall, and Soraka's expression was very solemn. If I'm not mistaken, Lester should have used the soul strengthening magic created by the black mage of Akasha, causing his original consciousness to be completely suppressed, or even erased by other soul consciousnesses, thus giving birth to a temporary personality. This personality can fully master Lester's physical characteristics to achieve the most perfect control. The new soul that inherits all the host's combat skills and common sense will have a powerful strength far beyond the former. Only the memory will not be inherited, because that belongs to another soul. It can be said that the soul strengthening magic is born for a life and death battle. This forbidden technique can help the caster improve his strength and defeat the enemy when he is desperate, but the souls of most casters will be harmed by the new soul. The lighter ones will lose most of their memories, and the more serious ones will have their souls directly destroyed by the new soul. When the new soul gradually dies, the caster will naturally die. Confused, Hina shook her body, her expression a little dull. So, Brother Lester is destined to die. Soraka shook her head. According to my observation, although Lester doesn't remember the past, his actions are still inclined towards you and the Emerald Territory. Otherwise, he would not have returned to the Emerald Territory with Vernus after losing his memory, and he would not have given up his self and freedom to fight the Envoicement. Hearing what Soraka said, Cinna's gloomy face finally became a little angry. Soraka continued to comfort him. This means that Lester's original soul has not died, but has been suppressed by the consciousness of the new soul. I have to say that Lester's soul is indeed strong enough. If Vernus is not wrong, the forbidden technique, soul strengthening, used by Lester has at least mixed the souls of tens of thousands of humans. Even I can't imagine the power that Lester has at this moment. In short, the power of magic is related to three factors: the casting environment, the toughness of the body, and the strength of the soul. Lester should have encountered some fatal danger in Hades City, and chose to use soul strengthening to find a way out for himself. From the results, he succeeded. Brother Lester went to the North Sea for Sister Mishap. Sister Mishap was able to wake up thanks to Brother Lester's soul pyroxene. I just didn't expect that such a powerful Brother Lester would encounter such a great danger. Sister Soraka, can you tell me about soul strengthening? The battle outside the window has been hidden in the elemental storm and will never be seen again. In the shaking of the earth, the dark sky was cut into unbridgeable gaps by the magic tornado, composed of thunder and frost and snow. Even the hard bricks and stones of the outer city began to collapse, as if the end of the world was coming. After attracting her gaze and confirming that her position would not be affected by the battle, Soraka sighed softly, as if she had seen through the veil of time. That was thousands of years ago. At that time, the Shurima Empire was still the top overlord on the Shurima continent. In the southern part of the Shurima continent filled with wild sand, a war that had lasted for more than 10 years entered its final stage. Under the attack of the Ascended Legion, the territory of Icathia was almost completely lost. Faced with the decline, the last quarry, note, the Magic Legion directly under the Icathian Mage King, decided to find a way to fight against the Ascended at all costs. Forbidden magic and black witchcraft were one of them. At that time, all the Icathian mages fell into a state of madness and used unimaginable ways to create some powerful magic that was not tolerated by the world and even attracted the attention of the god of death. In the solemn voice of Soraka, Cinna, Huangsu and Vernus seemed to have crossed the long river of time and returned to the bloody war period. At that time, the wizards of Icathia had not yet discovered the sound of destruction buried deep underground. They continued to explore the potential of mankind and tried to change the state of their bodies or souls to make themselves more threatening. Soul strengthening is a relatively mature forbidden technique. I don't know the specific principles, but I heard that in order to complete the soul strengthening magic, a total of 3 things are needed: soul storage magic tool for storing and harvesting souls, forbidden magic map for crushing and constructing new souls, and reinforcement method that can stimulate the map and establish a stable connection between the soul storage magic tool, the forbidden magic map and the caster. These 3 are indispensable. Because forbidden magic seriously disrupts the balance of the material world, the Dark Wizard of Icathia who created this forbidden magic had his soul taken away by the god of death after making 3 magic maps. No one can understand how the dead wizard used bloody and dark methods to make forbidden magic maps. In addition, after a person uses a forbidden magic map, it will perfectly merge with that person, which means that the 3 magic maps have become the only things in the world and can never be copied. One was used by the creator of the spell, and the whereabouts of the other 2 were unknown. No one knew where the Icathians took the other 2 spells. At this moment, the forbidden spell, Soul Strengthening, appeared on Lester. I guess Lester must have completed the fusion with a spell. Zinna frowned. She recalled that, when she was still young, Margaret, who was chasing the Narxan invaders, led the army to excavate a secret cemetery on the land of the Principality of Valoran. It was this Icathian cemetery that allowed Margaret to obtain several magic items, and finally gave them all to Lester. After that, Lester did not seem to use such things. He always showed a very cautious attitude, as if those things were very dangerous. I guess the Dark Seal Ring and the scrolls are the 3 items mentioned by Soraka. Lester's caution is right. Then how can Brother Lester return to his original state? I'm not too sure. Although the possibility is very small, I think that, if Lester's new soul dies, but his body doesn't die, maybe Lester can recover. Although there are not many readers, there are still readers who read the book, which makes me feel better. To be honest, this book has been purely original so far. Every plot and word that everyone thinks is boring was written by me with great effort. The reason why people don't read it is that my writing skills are not good enough, and I can't write it more interestingly. Secondly, it shows that this kind of epic text is no longer suitable for the online literature market. Everyone is under too much pressure in life, and they just want to have fun and relax when reading books. This book has a lot of characters, and everyone has their own life experiences and settings. It seems like a headache, so readers are naturally unwilling to buy it because the energy cost is too high. But I still want to work hard on writing it. Not to mention those messy things like whether the protagonist has a harem or not, whether the women are dead or not. Just talking about the plot, the world, and the power setting. This book is the kind that can be directly used as the world line and world background, if I get it from Riot. Up to now, I have not only perfected the Protoss system, the power system, and the spell system, but also wrote about the conflicts among the nations on the Valoran continent, the founding of Narxus, the ecological customs of Ionia, the origin of Vastea, the system of the underworld, and so on. I personally think that the fun of this book is not just about the protagonist killing everyone, pretending to be cool, getting slapped in the face, and collecting women. The most fun thing is to follow the protagonist, to experience the real Rune continent, and feel the protagonist's love, hatred, and vengeance. Take yourself out of the protagonist's mind, and don't bring yourself into the protagonist's shoes. Treat this book as a big movie. Perhaps you will have a different reading experience. It's a pity that I still have my main job, and I can't devote myself to writing. Otherwise, if I write more, the results should be better. I ask for your support for the monthly ticket event at the end of the month. Chapter 440 to Lester vs Simmons. Fidlit, on the magic battlefield outside the East City. The magic field has been completely broken, and the elemental tides in the environment radiate strange purple-red spectra in stripes. The stable elemental flow laces are ruthlessly torn apart by the astral magic and primitive magic. The violent airflow makes the shattered space eliminate the possibility of any space transmission. The earth has a numbing crack, and the powerful star energy is constantly eroding the earth. The soil and rocks on the surface are like tofu blocks, forming a 100-meter abyss under the corrosion of the star energy. The star energy that is constantly growing in the abyss cracks wants to return to the surface again to enhance Simmons' attack magic, but it is firmly sealed by the terrible cold air that freezes the soul. The violent ice element and star energy entangle and collide with each other, causing the abyss to continue to expand, forming a giant ice abyss crack that is more than 10 kilometers long. On this broken land, 2 figures, one red and one blue, were entangled tightly together. Lester, who was as fierce as a northern snow wolf, constantly stimulated the power of red runes to attack the giant in close combat in the form of a Vastea half-orc. In the life and death move, Lester did not stop releasing primitive magic. The power of runes in the frost field continued to erode Simmons' star energy shield, making Simmons feel a fatal threat. He kicked Lester with a whip kick and smashed him into the ground. Simmons, panting, took a half step back, staring at the beast falling into the abyss. He didn't know what kind of terrible power the human in front of him had. No matter how many times he defeated the opponent, no matter how much damage he caused to the enemy, Lester in front of him could always recover quickly. Instead, his physical condition was getting worse and worse, and even the abundant spiritual energy became thinner. Unknowingly, he had turned from an absolute advantage to a small disadvantage. The Star Dragon power and Titan power that should have crushed any secular magic seemed very powerless under Lester's strange characteristics, which was far beyond his imagination. In his opinion, the Star Dragon blood and Titan blood in his body should be able to kill any creature on Earth. In fact, he did cause multiple fatal injuries to the human in front of him, but the human's recovery ability was too incredible. Lester, I want you to die. Why? Why do you, as a mortal, have such power? Why can't I kill you after giving everything? Seeing Lester, who was covered in scars, staggering up from the abyss again, Simon drawed, stepped on the ground with his right foot, and rushed towards Lester like a cannonball in the spider web like shattered ground, and pressed Lester to the ground with his left hand. You're broken already? Kid, you're still too young. Simon roared as he stared at the handsome face with blood on it, but a mocking smile. He raised his right fist like a heavy hammer. The strengthening of the Star Dragon power and the Titan God power turned the fist shining with blue light into a deadly weapon. In the light of the Titan runes on his body, Simon smashed Lester's head without hesitation, wanting to turn the hateful face into a mess, but was blocked by Lester's arms protecting his head. The fist was blocked for less than a second before it broke the red rune shield. One punch after another, Lester's arms were driven to twist to both sides like a twist with the sound of the joints breaking. The ground collapsed into a groove in the shape of a human body. Simon finally broke open the arms in front of him. Simon's right hand was aimed at Lester's head, and violent energy was brewing in his palm. Even though he was about to kill the other person, the mockery on the man's face made him even more angry. As their dog, your strength is just like this. You are too weak, kid. Let them find someone stronger. Pointing at his right face with his right elbow, that was so deep that the bone could be seen, Lester continued to provoke the enemy in front of him, facing the destructive energy that was close at hand. Hit here, come on, use some strength. Haven't you ever had milk? Poor child. Go to hell. Crack. The deadly cold air around the body completely surrounded the two people. At the moment when the cold air exploded, Simon's body was frozen for a short time. The violent mutant ice element destroyed the stability of the star energy in his right hand. The light ball exploded directly, and the ground that could not continue to maintain stability was completely shattered. The two rolled and fell into the abyss they had opened up with their own hands. They fell heavily on the ground without any protection, and the frozen opposite side was thrown into two spider web-like deep pits. There were ice blue and dark blue deadly magic remnants everywhere. The depths of the ice abyss were like the netherworld hell. Lying limp on the ground, Lester continuously transformed his soul energy into the green runes on his body, and then used the vitality output by the green runes to restore his body. His broken arms soon recovered. Covered in blood, Lester gathered his silver hair, that was stuck together by blood on his forehead, got up from the ground, and slowly walked towards Simon not far away. The mockery on Lester's face turned into a cruel killing intent. Now it seems that I have won. Kid, you shouldn't have come to Emerald, and you shouldn't have bullied my woman. It was naturally impossible to let Simon break free. Lester stepped on Simon's face with his right foot, staring at the ice crystal that was about to break free, and input a steady stream of new energy into the ice that was on the verge of breaking. In the blink of an eye, the ice crystal that had obtained new energy closed the cracks and became harder. At the same time, the power of the red rune suddenly erupted, wrapping both of them. The erosion characteristics of the red rune can perfectly break through Simon's star energy shield and cause fundamental damage to the Titan body. Although it is very slow, it is indeed effective. This is the only way Lester can cause damage to Simon's Titan body. He realized this from the beginning and was waiting for Simon to reveal a flaw. Although it takes a lot of soul power to stimulate the red rune, which will burn his soul, Lester obviously can't take care of too much at this moment. If his soul power is exhausted first, the worst result is just his own death. This is the extreme he can do, and there is no optimal solution. Unaware that Lester had already run out of energy, Simon, whose other half was trapped in the red ice, only felt that his body was ignited and made a hissing sound. The speed of the star energy flowing away suddenly increased. He wanted to break free, but his body was frozen by the terrible cold. He had a huge strength, but could not release it. He knew that he was about to lose. I heard from your former master that your body has a unique talent that can stimulate your own strength in a short time. You sit on the other side of the soul chain." The woman's cold command was as emotionless as always. Simond closed his eyes, and everything in front of him gradually dissipated, as if he had returned to the time when he had just met the god. Before that, "Master, can I ask Trittles a question?" "Ask it, don't waste too much time." "In your opinion, what exactly is your believer?" This time it was another woman's voice. "My believers are probably just fun toys, Simond. I actually like you quite a bit. After all, you are one of the best." After the connection was cut off, Simond opened his eyes, and his soul and body began to burn. Toys. Chapter 443 Farewell Day. An explosion far more terrible than the previous one struck from the east outside the city. The ground shook, and the blue magic shockwave destroyed the eastern part of Fidlet's outer city. The solid military buildings and training grounds collapsed and cracked rapidly under the impact of the energy, turning into dust. The residents of Emerald Territory who evacuated to the west in time were not harmed. Instead, Hina and others who stayed in the tower to observe the battle had to evacuate the tower that was about to collapse. The moment they left the tower, Soraka held up a magic shield to protect everyone. The next moment, the rubble hit the shield and buried several people. When the earth returned to calm, the ruins suddenly exploded. Soraka, who had removed the shield, had her hands severely burned. She was supported by Vernus, who asks you to stand up. "There is a healing mage in the Black Rose. Do you need me to take you there?" Hina spread her white wings and looked at the injured one-horned star spirit who was injured, saving everyone with complicated eyes. But Soraka shook her head. "I can heal myself. Don't worry about me. If my perception is correct, the battle over there seems to be over." "Okay, then I'll go over there and take a look." Cinna, flapping her wings, temporarily put Soraka aside. The battlefield was approaching the east. The devastation was not enough to describe the state of the east of Fidlet. The closer to the city, the more serious the elemental turbulence. The air was still filled with the terrifying star dragon power that had not completely dissipated, which could easily cut and tear apart any creature that approached. In the super standard battle, this place had become a GD for mortals. Hina kept dodging the magic turbulence and lowered her altitude. Finally, she arrived at the battlefield outside the city. The landform was completely different from before. The lush green land had turned into a barren and dangerous magic ice abyss. The air was full of magic cyclones like blades. The earth was cracked into countless cracks and pits. A giant north-south crack spanned more than 10 miles, stretching from the Silver Mountains to the Urus Mountains in the north. There were traces of battles everywhere. Hina flew 2 circles and did not find any living creatures. She became anxious until another embarrassed angel with wings appeared in the sky with a dazed look on his face. "Sister, what's the situation now?" Coming to Miss Ha's side, Hina helped her sister land on a relatively safe landing ground. "Lester. He defeated the messenger Simond, but was taken away." "What do you mean? Who took brother Lester away?" "Sister, cheer up." Shaking Miss Ha's body vigorously, Hina became more and more anxious. After realizing that he couldn't defeat Lester, Simond chose to self-destruct. Lester's life or death was unknown in the explosion. Then a space transmission channel appeared, and a little girl with orange hair jumped out. She stuck out her tongue at me and took Lester away directly. "Didn't you stop her?" Miss Ha knelt on the ground with some bitterness, spitting out a mouthful of blood, her eyes filled with tears. "I can't do it. I can't do anything. I'm too weak." Holding up her seriously injured sister, Cinna hung her head and said nothing, flying in the direction she came from. A week later, except for Freljord, all the countries in the southern continent of Eloran knew about the great disaster that occurred in Fidlet. For a time, the Emerald Territory once again became the focus of the Veloran continent. A powerful being who calls himself the Messenger of God judged the independent territory of Naxos. It is rumored that the Messenger of God defeated the Seraph Mishap, killed the Lord of Emerald Territory, Lester, and caused unimaginable damage to the east city of Fidlet. The rumor continued until the Lord of Emerald Territory, Lester, personally showed up to clarify it. Finally, the Emerald Territory's governor said that the Emerald Territory launched a secret weapon to destroy the Messenger of God, and the Lord was fine. Having witnessed the ruins of the east city of Fidlit and the giant ice abyss rift in the eastern plains with their own eyes, most of the visitors and residents chose to believe it, and began to have, awe of the strength of the Emerald Territory. For a while, the Emerald Territory seemed to have gained a certain transcendent status on the continent of Aloran. After all, the power to kill gods is not something that all forces have. People did not understand what kind of changes would be caused by the incident that had not yet officially begun to ferment. However, the Emerald Territory had already stabilized the turbulent situation and killed a large number of spies and thugs who took advantage of the chaos to cause damage. It was said that the Margaret Legion, which was fighting abroad, would soon return to the Emerald Territory to control the situation. For a time, the restless forces of other countries could only choose to lay down their arms. In any case, the Emerald Territory was considered to be stable. How to rebuild the East City and build a stone bridge across the ice abyss, connecting the Charlesburg and the Emerald Territory, had been put on the agenda. In the inner city of Fidlit, in the Lord's Mansion, part of the aftermath was finally completed. After a week of rest, Vernis, Soraka and Huangsu asked to leave. The magic steel mask was placed on the table next to the puppet cat. In her own home, Cinna did not wear the mask. This was the only time she could relax and be herself. Have you decided? Sister Vernis, are you really not considering staying in the Emerald Territory? Yes, it's decided. Vernis nodded politely, glanced at Soraka and Huangsu beside her, and smiled at Hina. I promised to follow Lestat, and I will not break my promise. Unless I confirm that he is really dead, I will look for the next direction of my life. Sister Huangsu will return to the sect in Ionia. She has received the letter that Lestat left for her, and she has no regrets. As for Soraka the Prophet, she predicted Lestat's movements. Soraka the Prophet and I are going to act together to try to find Lestat, so there is naturally no reason to stay. What? Sister Soraka, do you know where Brother Lestat is? Overjoyed, Hina hugged Soraka, who was a head taller than her, and made Soraka a little embarrassed. It's just some broken fragments. In the prophecy, I saw an ice field and a lake. I think Lester might have been taken to a place in Freljord by the Protoss, so the two of us decided to go to Freljord to look for him. Wouldn't it be more convenient if I sent an army? Otherwise, you can wait a little longer. After Sister Margaret comes back, you can follow the Legion to Freljord. Cinna's proposal was quickly rejected by Soraka. This is indeed a solution, but it is not very good to send troops directly. Our actions will be very inconvenient. The climate in Freljord is not something that ordinary people can endure. Moreover, there are many terrible races and dangerous beasts on that cold land, as well as the rumored violent god of Freljord. I think it is better for us to travel light. Thanks to the reader, 2030, for the monthly ticket and 10,000 points reward. More and more will be added. Next is Lester's journey to Freljord. I hope you will like it. Chapter 444 Things have changed. After bidding farewell to Vernis and the other two, Hina, who was a little excited because of the news about Lester, quickly came to Miss Ha's house to share the good news. However, the moment she pushed the door open, Hina's face changed. She did not sense her sister's presence. She quickly ran to the bedroom on the second floor. As expected, the room was empty, with only a letter on the dressing table. She opened the envelope, and Miss Ha's unique handwriting came into view. Hina fell on the bed in disappointment, and a feeling of betrayal surged in her heart. To my dear sister Hina, please forgive my sister for choosing to leave without saying goodbye. 7 days and nights have passed, and I still can't sleep peacefully. Every time I close my eyes, I seem to be back to that cold night. Lester, who saved me again, was taken away by someone else in my sight. I could only lie on the ground like a coward and watch Lester being taken away by someone else. I could not forget how powerless I was, and I could not forgive my weakness. The strength that I was proud of on weekdays had no effect in front of a strong enemy. In fact, I had always been a burden to Lester and Emerald Territory. I had failed the land that raised me, and the man who loved me. I was completely overwhelmed by this sense of guilt and powerlessness. I had to think about what kind of enemy we were facing. What kind of world was the Star Realm where my mother lived? I suddenly realized that we actually knew nothing about the enemy, including our mother. We were still only in our childhood memories. Unconsciously, my mother had become an illusory symbol. This feeling of confusion and fear made me realize that escape is useless, and we must always face what we should face. I want to understand who we are, why the righteous giant gods of the Star Realm have been staring at us, what kind of existence is in the Star Realm above the giant god peak, and whether I can become stronger. The Emerald Territory is like Lester's warm embrace. We who stay in the Emerald Territory will never grow up, and will never be able to truly stand on our own. How can we truly spread our wings without experiencing snow, rain, wind, and frost? So I decided to go to the Star Realm to have a look. Since the giant gods want something from me, then at least they won't kill me. As long as they choose to use me, I won't be in danger. Please rest assured, no matter what happens, I will not betray the Emerald Territory and Lester. You are the most important people to me. When I find out the situation of the Star Realm and the giant gods, we will not continue to be ignorant of the enemy. At that time, I will come back again and face the enemy with you. Lester has handed over the Emerald Neck to you, Hina. I believe that you can manage this land well even without me. It's just that my father's side will be handed over to you to take care of. I have no face to face my father. I'm afraid that my father's retention will make me weak again. I'm afraid that the courage in my heart will be exhausted by separation again and again. Hina, please help me say sorry to my father. I believe that one day the three of us can get together and hug each other happily. Arsehole, arsehole, arsehole. Following Lester, the second person I love the most left me. The daily pressure broke out completely. Hina, with tears streaming down her face, was a little hysterical. She wanted to tear up the letter in her hand, but when she was about to do it, she found that she couldn't do it at all. The woman could only put down the letter helplessly and lie on the bed crying. Why do you do this? Obviously. Morris outside the door shook his head at Zaya, who looked worried. The man sighed and gently closed the door. Don't you need to go in and take a look? Let her cry for a while. Every time you grow up, you will always pay a price. The next moment, a heart-wrenching cry came from the room. Woo-ha. No one knows that the reason why there are no animals in this land is that deep in the ruins of the ancient city, there is a magic test site from the Star World. Any animal will feel uneasy and fearful in the special biological waves and spontaneously stay away from the ancient city sanctuary. As for humans, some lucky ones will be selected and passively enter the bottom of the ancient city, using their lives to experience the mystery and miracles that mortals cannot understand. The magic test site built in the underground natural ice cave displays some strange and advanced magic equipment. The test site, which was originally unpopular, suddenly appeared with 3 people, namely Twilight Star Spirit Zoe, Justice Star Spirit Justice and Curious Star Spirit Trich, as well as the man who was held in the arms of Twilight Star Spirit like a dead person. Putting the man in her arms gently on the stone bed, Zoe looked at the owner of this place, Curious Star Spirit Trich, with some concern. Until this moment, he still held a soul fragment in his hand. If she remembered correctly, it seemed to be Simond. Note, the consciousness projection of the reader. Gods will cry. A private customized character? Even with such a powerful self-explosion, he didn't die completely. Zoe had to admire Tritius's means. Can you really guarantee that Lester won't die? Tritius, who looked like a woman, stared at the naked Lester with a strange look in her eyes and licked her lips obscenely. I can't guarantee it, because the previous experimental subjects all died, so I said should not die. Wow, then there's no need. I will try my best to convince Lester to obey. Zoe was shocked and quickly opened her arms to protect Lester. However, Justice bypassed Zoe and stroked Lester's body as if he was playing with an object. After passing through it once, it finally stopped at the position of the heart. Justice began to guide the divine power. Right here, I feel the power of the rune. As soon as the voice fell, a green energy took the initiative to attack Justice's right hand from the position of the heart. The woman took a half step back, looked at her right hand that was completely burnt, and smiled at Zoe. Twilight, you have also seen the power of runes. We understood from the beginning how dangerous runes are. This power is strong and mysterious. The most important thing is that we have no control over this power. This is why we have to guide the mortal race to actively collect runes. This dangerous power must be concentrated and sealed, and if Lestat wants to master this power, he must be controlled by us. Otherwise, no matter how special he is, we can only kill him. Once he masters more rune power, it will pose a fatal threat to us. Okay. Thank you to the reader, Gods Will Cry, for the monthly ticket and 10,000 points reward. I will add the last update. Please don't reward me. I really don't have a drop left, CAC. If you reward me again, I can only stay up late to write. I still have to work like a cow tomorrow. Special thanks to the reader. If time could flow back, I would choose death for the 12 monthly tickets, and thank you to the other readers who voted for the monthly tickets to support staying up late Poppy. Because there are too many people, I will not list them one by one here. I will work hard to write and write well to repay everyone questions. Chapter 445 Prisoner in the Ice Cave. Zoe made way, and Trittles approached Lester, took out an experimental sealing stone that was glittering with starlight, and looked at the two of them. This kind of suppression and confrontation of power will last for a long time, in order to achieve the most perfect balance between the body and the soul. As for whether there are other side effects, I don't know. If no one monitors and adjusts, accidents may happen at any time. I just want to ask, have you really made a decision? I still have a lot of things to do, and I definitely can't stay here for a long time. Don't look at me. Doesn't Twilight like this mortal? Just let her stay. Ah. Do I have to stay here all the time? Okay. Who made me like little Lele? Zoe nodded with a frown. House arrest was even more uncomfortable for her than killing her. No matter what, she agreed first, and then thought of a solution. After making preparations, Trittles placed the seal stone on Lester's chest. The moment it touched Lester's skin, the block of seal stone melted directly, spreading from the heart to other parts of the body like a thin dark blue snake. Soon, dense dark blue silk threads wrapped Lester's entire body, forming a dark blue light cocoon the size of a human. The rest is up to time. The aspect of justice and the aspect of curiosity had already left, leaving Zoe kicking the small stones on the ground unhappily, thinking about how she could monitor Lester while traveling. 3 minutes later, Zoe, who opened the portal, decided to travel first, and then think about the problem. The major events that happened in Fidlet are just a drop in the ocean in the long history of Runeland. Time flies, and time changes. 22 years have passed in the blink of an eye. For the gods, it is just a blink of an eye. Narxan calendar, 45 AD. The war-torn Valoran continent ushered in the most peaceful decades, and the countries began a period of rest and recuperation. Since the end of the Darkin War and the beginning of the Northern Warlord Sun Uzal, the conquest on the Valoran continent has never stopped. After finally overthrowing the rule of the tyrant Mordekaiser, the runes that suddenly appeared in various parts of the continent once again became the fuse that ignited the war. The power of the runes made all the mages crazy, and everyone was in danger for a while. The power of the runes easily turned the mountains into valleys and the sea overturned the inland. Every country suffered heavy casualties and the population was depleted. As a result, a city-state in the western continent that hated mages was born, the magic-forbidden country called Demacia. The short-lived peace had just arrived. The Larxo tribe, which had overthrown the rule of Mordekaiser, embarked on the road of expansion by relying on the immortal fortress they occupied. They fought successively with the Freljord's Howling Wind tribe, the Frost Kingdom, the Hedi and the Kalis, and expanded their territory to the Black Iron Fort with iron blood and courage. General Vakal, who had captured Jelina's head, also successfully relied on military merit to become the largest warlord on the Dalmor plain. Vakal, who had made outstanding military achievements, allowed the Rezus family to truly gain a foothold in the upper class of Narxus. Through enfeoffment, 3 Narxan families obtained territories and became glorious pioneer families. After the war, Narxus, which had exhausted its blood, had to stop its further expansion and began to consolidate and manage its achievements, raising its own sons who had no blood relationship with it. This made the 4 kingdoms around Narxus breathe a sigh of relief, and the Valoran continent presented a thriving scene. As for the independent territory of Narxus, the Emerald Territory has always maintained a detached position. The iron-locked stone bridge over the extremely cold ice abyss in the east of Fidlet is enough to scare away all those who are afraid of heights. Only by walking on the bridge can you understand what kind of great power the Emerald Territory holds. Rich, powerful, and mysterious have become synonymous with the Emerald Territory, and the Lord of the Emerald Territory, Lester, has also become a taboo in a sense among all countries. Since the Emerald Territory was attacked by the gods 22 years ago, the man named Lester seems to have never appeared in public again, but everyone knows that Lester lives in Fidlet and controls everything in the Emerald Territory. The silver-winged dragon bird under the Lord's crotch that can transform into a human has also become a topic of conversation among nobles from all countries. The Lord of the Emerald Territory has also earned the nicknames of Dragon Operator and Dragon Rider. Only the real core dignitaries of the Emerald Territory understand that the man who created the Emerald Territory is not in the Emerald Territory at this moment. In the underground ice cave of the ruins of the ancient city of Rakstak in Freljord, a man with waist-length black hair walked out of the cold water, wrapped himself in a simple animal skin skirt, and let the biting cold water drip from his body. Sitting on the stone pier, the man began to carve the fist-sized ice in his hand with a stone knife. The stone knife was not sharp and hard. After just a few uses, the stone knife began to become dull. However, the man patiently regrinded the dull stone knife on the rough stone, making the tip and blade of the stone knife sharp again, and continued to cause damage to the hard ice. The spherical ice soon turned into a lifelike dragon bird in the man's hand, with its wings spread high, as if it was dancing. Putting down the stone knife, the man looked at the exquisite ice sculpture in his hand for a while, carefully placed the dragon bird in the ice wall with a groove dug out, and placed it side by side with other ice sculptures. In other empty slots of the ice wall, there are all kinds of strange chess and cards and language knowledge scrolls, such as enamel bone cards, marble chess, divination wooden cards, point cards, playing cards, etc., which are dazzlingly placed. Some of them are from various places in Runeland, while others are not native to Runeland. The stacked scrolls record the ancient languages of different civilizations and the ancient characters that record the history of the kingdom. The man did not look at them, as if he had lost interest. Sitting not far from the groove, the man just quietly looked at the familiar faces on the ice sculptures, wondering what he was thinking. Time passed silently, and only the glowing fluorite in the ice cave that was day and night emitted a soft white light, so that the man could see nothing. I don't know how long it took. A magic portal composed of the starry sky appeared in the ice room, and a barefoot girl with orange hair jumped out of the portal. The girl's heterochromatic eyes flashed bright starlight, and excitedly placed the sheepskin scroll and an exquisite wooden box in her arms on the stone table. Hey, this is a good thing. Spreading the sheepskin checkered chessboard on the stone table, the girl opened the wooden box, which contained dozens of black and white pebbles. After doing all this, the girl jumped to the man's side, hugged the man's arm, and begged, little Lele, I have done it according to your requirements. Teach me how to play, please." After kissing the girl's smooth forehead and settling the girl, the man smiled and sat on the stone pier opposite the girl. It's a very simple rule. As long as the opponent's chess piece is sandwiched, the chess piece is considered to have been eaten. In the end, the number of black and white pieces on the chessboard is counted, and the person with more chess pieces wins. Wow, it's so simple, but it doesn't feel so simple. The girl excitedly placed the first black piece on the checkered scroll, and looked at the man expectantly, but the man did not move the piece directly. "So, if you lose again this time, you are not allowed to restrict my freedom anymore. This is what we agreed on." Hearing the man say this, Zoe's face suddenly fell. "Ah, little Lele, don't you like me anymore? I like you very much, but this has nothing to do with your imprisonment of me. This is the only thing I won't give in to. Okay, actually I'm tired of playing here. But you have to promise me that, even if I go out, you can't refuse me when I come to play with you. You have to play with me at any time, okay?" The journey to Freljord officially begins. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 446, Prisoner Survival Rules. After losing 5 games in a row, Zoe lost interest in Othello and dragged Lester to play other board games for a while before leaving again. Glancing at the scratches carved by the stone knife on the ice wall, which symbolized the years, Lester, who was alone again, gathered his long hair and lay back on the cold stone bed. The biting cold from his back would not hurt him. Although he still had weak recovery ability, he was no different from a mortal at this moment. Under the special care of the Protoss, he lost all his strength, as if he had returned to the day when he first came to Runeland. He could only be tied up by the Narxons and taken to an unknown place, surrendering and being slaughtered. The long days even made him forget that the world in front of him was a real world mapped by a game. He even thought of the evil little wizard Vika and wondered whether Vika, like himself, would rather go crazy than be trapped alone in one place and unable to do anything when he was imprisoned in the immortal bastion by Mordekaiser. The memory ends with the day when I fought with the evil owl and released the unknown Icathian strengthening spell. It was as if in the blink of an eye, everything in front of me became unfamiliar. When I opened my eyes, I was already in this cage that I could not escape. The only concept of time was the mark on the ice wall. He didn't know when he woke up, nor did he know how many years had passed outside. During the 42-83 days of Zoe's imprisonment, he was the loneliest prisoner in the closed ice cave, and only his shadow accompanied him. Given Zoe's playfulness, it was not common in these 4,000 days. It was better to say that the accumulation of foreign objects on a wall in the ice cave was already Zoe's excessive spoiling of him. The fact that she could come to visit him often without abandoning him was enough to prove that Zoe really had special feelings for him. As for whether it was the love that Zoe talked about, Lester had no way to tell. After all, although Zoe refused his deeper and more intuitive contact on the grounds of fear of pain, she did not refuse skin-to-skin contact. Instead, she was very involved in every contact. At present, it was still very difficult for Lester to deepen his feelings with Zoe in some improper way. He was not going to force Zoe to do anything, which would be meaningless, except destroying the relationship. Thinking of the Twilight Star spirit who was the same as in the game, Lester smiled helplessly and closed his eyes. He more or less understood the unique personality of the Twilight Star spirit. Zoe was always curious about everything, but it was difficult for her to devote her energy to one thing for a long time. She was very playful and liked to observe and explore things in the material world from different angles and spaces. It was also because of this that Zoe did not come to see him very often. At first, he was not used to it, but later, Lester relaxed a lot. After getting used to long-term loneliness, the noisy Zoe only made Lester more painful. Fortunately, after the pain, Lester had learned to accept everything. Loneliness, pain, victory, or failure. He had enough patience to accept them all and smiled calmly. Perhaps this was the most meaningful gain during this period of imprisonment. Zoe has promised to give me freedom, but she will never take the initiative to help me escape from here. I have tried it before. The rock wall of this empty ice cave is extremely hard. Without the right tools, it is impossible to carve a way to the outside world by human chiseling. So, I have the power of freedom, but whether I'm really free is another matter. It's like I won money in a casino. The money is in my hand, but whether I can leave the casino depends on my ability. Lester jumped off the stone bed, picked up the stone knife used for ice sculpture and observed it. He came to a thick ice wall. The ice wall was shaped by magic and was much harder than ordinary ice. The ice cave has a space of about 100 square meters. The interior is an egg-shaped cavity structure, surrounded by stones on 5 sides, and frozen on one side. The frozen side is the blocked exit. There is a narrow air hole channel deliberately opened up by magic above the cavity. The ventilation channel connects to the outside world and constantly exchanges air between the ice cave and the outside world. Under the special power in his body, Lester can live without food or water, but without oxygen, Lester will be in an infinite cycle of suffocation and death. This is the only reason why there is a ventilation hole in the ice room. As for why there is an ice pool for bathing, this is the fruit of love between Lester and Zoe. As for whether it was sprayed by Zoe, it depends on one's own opinion. It is impossible to chisel through the stone wall. The only way to leave the ice cave is to melt the several meters thick iced wall in the direction of the egg tip. The water in the pool has been specially treated. If you want to melt the ice wall with water, it will only make the ice wall thicker and thicker. There is no condition for making a fire in the ice cave. The only thing that can generate temperature is myself. He bit the wooden sign that he had prepared long ago in his mouth. The not so sharp stone knife crossed the position below his left upper arm. After one cut, only the epidermis was cut open, and only a shallow blood mark appeared, but no blood dripped out. Lester continued to cut the flesh with the stone knife, just like a rough saw blade. The stone knife cut the dermis with repeated friction, and cut into the subcutaneous tissue with difficulty. The artery ruptured, and blood finally began to gush out, pouring on the ice wall with wisps of white gas. Lester put the wound on his left arm against the ice wall, letting the blood splash on the ice wall as much as possible. In just a dozen seconds, Lester's face turned as pale as paper, and his body began to tremble unconsciously. Soon Lester fell into a coma due to excessive blood loss, and his breath was weak. I don't know how long it took. Lester opened his eyes, spit out the bitten wooden sign, and the man climbed up from the ground. The wound on the axillary artery of his left arm had completely healed, and the vertical ice wall was melted by the temperature of the blood. The concave surface was about 5 centimeters. There was a blood-colored ice crystal on the ground. Without the temperature of the human body, the blood also turned into the most ruthless ice slag. We have to keep going. Lester picked up the stone knife that had fallen on the ground, sharpened it again, and came to the ice wall, biting another wooden sign in his mouth. The friction sound of the blunt knife cutting meat sounded again, and the hot blood poured on the ice wall, melting the ice. Once, twice, 5 times, 10 times. From the moment he made up his mind, Lester did not allow himself to retreat. The bloody ice wall became thinner and thinner. Finally, after he got up from the ground again, the melted ice wall was enough for Lester to crawl through. After sorting out the current property he had, Lester finally took away only the stone knife, the fluorite block for lighting, the animal skin skirt and several animal skin scrolls. He smashed all the ice sculptures on the ground and left the ice cave without hesitation. Chapter 447 Fateful Encounter. Outside the ice cave was a smooth and narrow ice pass. Following the bare pass, the light from the fluorite dispelled the darkness ahead, and the light refracted by the ice crystals allowed Lester to barely see the road ahead. Fortunately, the rising terrain was relatively flat, and the smooth ice surface did not cause Lester to slip and fall back. After walking for about half an hour, Lester left the pass and found an underground river. The space was much wider than before. Without hesitation, Lester walked upstream along the river. What surprised him was that he did not find any animals along the way, and there were no fish swimming in the underground river. However, thinking that there were star spirits active here, Lester was relieved. The underground ice layer visible to the naked eye was getting less and less, and the temperature gradually warmed up. Lester's footsteps stopped in front of several red umbrellas and white spot mushrooms growing on the rock wall. The red umbrellas and white poles on the brown rock wall were as conspicuous as the funeral band at the east end of the village. There is a cap on the head, a ring around the waist, and a stipe on the feet. This seems to be a fungus of the genus Amanita. I don't know if it is the rose red Amanita, but I can be sure that this thing is highly poisonous. I might be able to use it. Lester collected several brightly colored Amanita fungi on the ground and wrapped them in a leather scroll. He then ground some mushroom juice with the remaining Amanita and applied it to the tip of the stone knife. At least in the short term, the stone knife had a deadly threat to anything that breathed. The terrain became easier and easier to walk. Lester quickened his pace. After climbing over 2 more rock walls, Lester finally saw the sunlight outside the cave entrance. After getting out of the cave entrance, a giant hill with its back to the snow peak was blocking the wind and snow from the north, blocking the wind and snow on the other side of the mountain. Under the giant hill was the ruins of an ancient city. Among the ruins, there were sculptures of stone giant axes. In the center of the broken stone pillars full of years, Lester saw a huge blue stone statue. The owner of the statue seemed to be a woman, wearing a crown and the unique fur clothing of the Freljord people. Judging from her majestic and solemn temperament, the woman's identity seemed to be not simple. The lifelike woman bent her left knee and stepped forward on the boulder. She raised her left hand high, holding a crystal stone emitting a deep blue light in her palm. In her right hand, she held a gorgeous stone longbow. Her long skirt dragged on the ground. She was very plump. Judging from her broad arms, the woman should have considerable strength. The statue not far away made Lester guess where he was, but before he could figure out who the owner of the statue was, a scream like seeing a ghost came from a temporary wooden house. Soon, Lester was surrounded by 5 frail-jawed bandits with big beards and ferocious faces. The leading bandit was 1.95 meters tall, holding 2 large iron axes, and his body was more than 1 circle thicker than the others. He could smell a sour smell 5 meters away. The others were equipped with some rusty iron swords, blood-stained clubs or broken birch short bows. In addition, no one was wearing armor. Lester understood how harsh the environment in Freljord was. So many people, but they didn't even have a decent weapon. Well done, Slant Eyes. The roasted hare in my tent is yours. Licking the man in front of him with greedy eyes, the bandit leader was so lustful that he rewarded his men with his dinner. Thank you, boss. The short archer, who was called Slant-Eyed by the bandit leader, left in great joy. He had only been able to get a little bit of leftovers, and he never thought that he could enjoy the hare that belonged to the boss alone. The bandit leader waved his hand to the other men who were ready to move, and grinned. He is mine. If you understand, get out of here, and don't delay my good deeds. Watching the bandit leader drive away the other unwilling people with cold eyes, Lester began to put the things he was carrying on the ground. After seeing Lester's simple stone knife, the bandit leader laughed, completely relieved, and began to undress. He didn't care whether the person in front of him was a man or a woman. He had to be the one he liked. Baby, come here. Don't be afraid. Let me give you some real warmth. Don't be afraid. Put down your little toy. You know it can't hurt me at all. Lester obediently approached the bandit leader, but he didn't put down the stone knife, but stabbed the stone knife into the bandit's chest. His face changed, and the bandit leader waved his right arm to block the stone knife. A shallow blood mark appeared on his right arm, and the stone knife fell out of his hand. It seems that, if I don't give you a little pain, you still don't know who you are against. Come on. The other 2 bandits who wanted to secretly watch the fight saw that Lester dared to resist, and they all picked up their weapons and rushed over. Use blunt weapons. Don't cripple me. Can't you hear me, you 2 bastards? That's the Laxtak Sanctuary. It is said that the Lu family, who believe in the god of forging, personally built the statue of Queen Avarosa. For centuries, there have always been some frail-jawed bandits and treasure hunters who are eager for the queen's treasure and come here to hunt for treasure. The Ice Wall Lock Church climbed a small hill. The old man looked at the ruins of the ancient city in the distance with a complicated expression. For him, although he has always served and believed in the Frost Witch Lysandra, he is full of admiration for Queen Avarosa herself. After all, when Queen Avarosa was in power, Freljord was truly unified, and the tribes would not fight each other for some inexplicable reasons. In that era, the Freljord people not only stood up from the slavery of the god of thunder, but also had enough food to eat, which is something that the Freljord people nowadays can hardly do. Sealing the void is great, but for most Freljord people, peace and food are more worthy of attention. So, did Queen Avarosa really bury the treasure here? Grace, who has become more mature, has no signs of aging at all, but still has the face of a girl. Obviously, the blood of the Ice Wall Lock brings more than just terrifying power. If the queen really buried the treasure here, it must have been dug out long ago, so how could those bandits have a chance to attack? Wait, there seems to be someone fighting over there? After climbing up the hill, Catherine narrowed her eyes. The sorceress waved her right hand, and a magic ice pigeon rushed towards the direction of the ancient city ruins. How is it? Sister Catherine, what's going on over there? Grace asked as Church took out the void crystal from the true ice box to determine the direction to go. The bandits seem to be attacking a strange guy, like a savage. I think we need to go and see. Maybe those guys know something. Here. What's here? The conversation was interrupted, and Catherine and Grace looked at the old man with a trembling voice. In just a moment, the 2 women were attracted by the purple-red crystal flashing in the old man's hand. The next moment, the 2 women widened their eyes. The person we are looking for is here. Finally, Church's words confirmed the 2 people's unbelievable guesses. Chapter 448 The Frost Witch's Messenger. He killed 2 people with the rusty longsword he had seized. While the bandit leader was dying of poison, Lester took a few steps forward and pierced the short archer again. He took the birch short bow that was barely usable. Lester drew the bow and put the arrow on it, aiming at the last bandit. The left arm that was cut by the long sword seriously affected his endurance. Lester, who had lost too much blood, could not continue to aim. In addition, the short bow, which was already cracked, made a squeaking sound. Lester could only loosen the bowstring. In just a dozen seconds, his companions and the boss died cleanly. Knowing that he was no match for the savages, the last bandit turned around and started to run away without hesitation. A sharp arrow flew past the right side of his body with a whistling sound. The bandit's heartbeat accelerated rapidly. He only hated that he had two less legs and could not run faster. Fortunately, luck was still on his side, and the man behind him did not continue to shoot arrows. After watching the last bandit flee from him, Lester, who had no more energy to pursue him, used his long sword to cut the tendon bowstring of the rotten bow to use as a rope. He wanted to use the cloth strips on the bandit's body to bandage his wounds, but the man quickly gave up the idea, mainly because the bandit's clothes were too dirty and smelly, and he was afraid that his wounds would get infected and inflamed. Looking down at his embarrassed self, Lester smiled bitterly and began to pack up the spoils with his weak body. The barely usable sword and the bandit leader's most complete fur coat were what he needed, and it would be best to collect some food. Although he didn't need food and water to survive, that meant he had to endure the pain and hunger of death, and he didn't know if his body could hold on forever, especially after bleeding a lot of blood to melt the ice. He always felt that his body's recovery ability had decreased a lot, so it was better to eat something. The piercing pain continued to come from his left arm and right thigh where the arrow had hit him. Lester gritted his teeth and came to the campfire. He pressed the red-hot arrowhead against the wound that was bleeding profusely. The burning sound of flesh and skin accompanied by a burning smell came to his face. The two wounds were sutured in a rough but simple way in the severe pain. Wiping the cold sweat from his forehead, Lester sat by the campfire and calmed his breathing. The enemy that he could kill with a wave of his hand now caused him serious injuries. This made Lester feel a sense of illusion of time and space dislocation, as if everything he experienced was not real, but more like a dream. If coming to Runeland was a dream, then what was the meaning of this dream? Thinking stopped abruptly, Lester picked up the long sword and stood up again, looking coldly at the three uninvited guests approaching him. There was no need to guess. Lester knew that all three of them were mages. One of the old men, who looked very difficult to deal with, was staring at her with a round dark purple crystal. The other two women, one tall and one short, one fat and one thin, had completely different expressions. The shorter girl's face was full of worry and admiration, while the taller cold-faced woman's face was alert and confused, and there was also some shock. "What's the matter with you?" Lester's frail-jawed language was not very fluent, but it was not a problem to use it for simple communication. No, it's okay. I just want to ask, do you need help?" For a man who was only wearing a revealing animal skin skirt, defeated 5 robbers in the snow almost naked, and used a burning iron to heal her wounds, Grace didn't know how to communicate with him at all. Her tone unconsciously added a bit of admiration and respect. "I don't think I need help right now. Thank you for your kindness. I'm fine." Shaking his head, Lester, who had a sense of crisis, was not prepared to communicate with the 3 guys who came from unknown places and looked like mages. He was ready to get up and search the house, pack up everything he could take away, and be ready to leave at any time. Grace, whose kindness was rejected, scratched her head, while Church trembled as he put the dazzling void crystal back into the box of ice and began to laugh crazily. "Yes, this man is the guy we are looking for. It has been 23 years. We have been looking for him for 23 years. He has lost his trace for 10 years. I didn't expect him to be here. Ha ha ha, ha ha ha." Looking at each other, Catherine and Grace saw the worry in each other's eyes. First, the man must have heard what Church said, and second, thinking of the characteristics of the void crystal, the two did not want to pursue it too much. They just wanted to finish this journey as soon as possible and go to the Frostguard fortress with their goals. They believed that if the Frost Witch was there, she would definitely be able to solve Church's abnormal state. He's trying to escape. Stop him. As expected, Church's laughter stopped abruptly. The old man raised his palm angrily, and the wooden house that Lester was exploring instantly froze. An agile figure rushed out of the window, rolled and rushed away from the three people. In less than a second, the house was completely frozen by ice magic. Don't try to run. Church slapped his hands on the ground, and 4 elemental snow wolves condensed and rushed towards the fleeing Lester. He shouted to his junior, "Catch him with me. Don't let him run away." The speed of the elemental wolf was far beyond that of ordinary people. Lester only took 2 seconds to determine that he could not escape the pursuit of the elemental wolf and would be caught up sooner or later. Holding a relatively intact axe in his right hand and a rusty longsword smeared with the venom of Manita in his left hand, Lester stopped running and turned around to rush towards the 3 people behind the elemental wolf. He was ready to use the poison to kill the 3 people under the attack of the elemental wolf. The 4 elemental wolves, like a whirlwind of ice, did not bite the man, but suddenly exploded when approaching the man, erupting a burst of ice crystal cold mist, freezing Lester's body in place, unable to move, and could only watch the 3 enemies getting closer and closer. The gap between mortals and mages was vividly reflected. With just one move, Lester became a helpless lamb. Too weak. You are too weak. This is very abnormal. What happened to you? Church came to Lester and observed Lester carefully. The man in front of him was seriously inconsistent with the strong man in the mouth of the Frost Witch. There was no need to seduce him, just capture him by force. Lester had a cold face and did not speak. He knew that as a captive, it was useless for him to say anything. He didn't even know why the 3 lunatics in front of him attacked him. It would be more wrong to say more. At present, it seems that the other party does not intend to kill him. Further testing of his specific internal factors is needed to get results. Tie him up. Seeing that Lester was unwilling to answer, Church was too lazy to say anything more to Lester, but Grace on the side spoke up. "Senior, I don't think we need to. I say, tie him up." Church's face suddenly became very scary. Grace had never seen such an old man on this journey, and was so scared that she couldn't speak for a while. "Okay." Knowing that the old man might be affected by the void crystal, Catherine stood in front of Grace and agreed. Church regained his usual smile, took out the void crystal from the true ice box, held it in his hand and slowly approached Lester, as if to confirm something. Click. The crystal directly produced a crack when it touched the back of Lester's hand. Church laughed excitedly and carefully put the crystal back into the true ice box. The old man smiled and approached Lester's face. "I know you have a lot of questions, Kit. The Frost Witch will give you the answers." Chapter 449. The team that took the pill. After being a prisoner in the ice cave under the Raxtac Sanctuary for more than 10 years and a captive on the Freljord Icefield for more than a year, the 4 of them finally successfully crossed most of the Freljord Icefield in the early spring of the 2nd year, and returned to the outskirts of the Frostgirded Fortress in the far north. Lester had never thought that he would come to the Frostgirded Fortress as a prisoner for the first time. It seemed that his luck had become worse since he started fighting the Mother of Masks. If there was a chance, he would not mind plucking all the soul feathers of the Void Evil Owl and then turning the Void Evil Owl into a charcoal grilled bird to repay the Void Evil Owl for its good start. Fortunately, after getting used to being a captive, Lester did not think there was anything wrong with being a captive, especially when there was a Freljord girl who had a great liking for him. Lester, with his hands tied, could still enjoy the girl's feeding and tenderness. This was the only thing that made him feel warm in the cold Freljord. After crossing another hill, we will reach the Frostgirded Fortress. Lester, you will be surprised when you see it for the first time. The Frostgirded Fortress is a majestic and magnificent thing that people in the south can never imagine. Legend has it that it is an icy palace built by the god of forging himself. The core foundation is made of pure ice and is indestructible. Grace, who was sitting by the fire, put the roasted rabbit leg in her hand into Lester's mouth, patiently waiting for the man to chew and swallow it, and then gave him a mouthful of boiled river water in a kettle. She didn't know what kind of feelings she had for the man. She just liked the atmosphere of being with the man, and liked to listen to all kinds of stories from the man. This was something she had never experienced in her previous life. Unfortunately, until now, the man has not really revealed his identity, but just said that he is a prisoner. Such undisguised concealment made Grace a little disappointed. Speaking of Frostgirded Fortress, Grace, are there any porous around here? Come to think of it, I haven't seen these little creatures before. I heard that your Frostgirded clan in Freljord is keeping a close eye on them. After a year of practical application, although he still can't write casually, Lester has mastered the spoken Freljord language proficiently. Seriously speaking, the Freljord language is actually different from the Valoran language. The Freljord language is a pictographic script that is older than Valoran. Until now, the Freljord people rarely use the troublesome and useless Freljord ancient script. Except for the record keepers who need knowledge of characters and the Frostgirded mages who learn ancient magic, most Freljord people are more concerned about whether they will starve or freeze to death tonight, rather than some weird things. Fortunately, Grace is the Iceborn Warlock who has mastered the Freljord hieroglyphics, and Lester also took the opportunity to learn a lot. Moreover, the accents of different Freljord tribes are much more difficult to identify than Narxen and Demacia. In addition, the Freljord language itself is pronounced in a more barbaric tone. It is not difficult to understand why the Freljord people like to fight and imp-fight. Anyone who hears "borrow me as fuck you" will probably have to wave a brick to hit the person twice. Poro, there are indeed a lot of them around here. Grace threw away the bones that Lester had eaten clean and fed Lester a sip of water. Lester felt like a baby with a kind mother, Grace. He thought about it and found that he didn't hate the feeling of being cared for. The witch said that Porus are the earth elves of Freljord. No one can harm Porus, and Porus are not allowed to be sold. Every Poro that spreads to other places will be retrieved by the Iceborn Warlocks. Porus can only be found near the Frostgirded Fortress. In fact, there are people in the Frostgirded Fortress who are responsible for protecting the safety of Porus. It is very difficult for Porus to leave Freljord. For a period of time before this, if someone is found to forcibly abduct or harm Porus, the Frostgird has the power to forcibly arrest and detain them. Unfortunately, there were many incidents of Frost guards using Porus as an excuse to harm, rob and extort money from others. The witch first executed the Frost guards who oppressed ordinary tribesmen, and then deliberately selected some people from the Iceborn to make various magic marks on Porus. With the magic marks, once Porus are hurt, they can be captured by Iceborn Warlocks, and those who hurt Porus can be punished reasonably. This will not let Porus suffer harm and bullying, nor will some innocent people be oppressed because of Porus, so this method continues to this day. We call those mages who guard Porus envoys internally. It is worth mentioning that the Porus raised by each Porus envoy seem to be different. Catherine walked out of the abandoned tent, glanced at the two people chatting enthusiastically in front of the fire, and recalled Church, who was secretly playing with the void crystal with purple eyes, and couldn't help but sigh. If she didn't know Grace's character, she would even doubt whether the man named Lester would deceive Grace and let Grace secretly let him go. No matter how you look at it, this team looks like it's going to be doomed. Fortunately, this journey is about to end. As long as I can survive tomorrow, I can return to the Frostgirded Fortress. With this achievement, I can naturally apply to become the safest Poro Master, away from the dangerous tasks of the Watcher Assembly. It seems that she thought of her retirement life, and Catherine's expression relaxed a little, but accidents always come faster than expected. In the blink of an eye, a terrible cold wave that swept the world mixed with snow hit the camp from the northeast. The fire was extinguished, and visibility suddenly decreased. The blizzard is coming. We must go into the mountains, hide in the cave, and come with me. The violent wind sound almost completely drowned out the old wizard's roar. Catherine nodded with difficulty in the wind, ran back to the tent that was about to break, picked up the luggage and rushed out. Grace was also caught off guard by the sudden change of the terrible celestial phenomenon. Fortunately, she always knew that when she was at a loss, she should just follow the wise man. As for Lester, he had no freedom to move on his own. He could only be pulled by Grace and follow the old wizard, protected by Grace's magic shield. The starry sky seemed to be swallowed by darkness. The screams of wind and snow became louder and louder until nothing could be heard. except for the light emitted by the slightly lit staff crystal in the hand of the ice wall lock. All in front of him was the darkness and wind and snow that could not be seen in front of his hand. The four people's movements were not slow. After turning on the magic shield, their walking speed increased a lot. Following the old church, who was familiar with the terrain, they climbed up the mountain all the way and finally walked into the cave in the mountain before the blizzard became bigger. In just over 10 minutes, everyone's physical energy and power reserves were consumed. On the contrary, Lester looked the most relaxed. He frowned, guessing that this sudden blizzard might be more troublesome than imagined. After blocking the only entrance with frost magic, old church sat on the ground tiredly, gathered some scattered firewood in the cave, and lit a fire. The small flame dispelled the cold and darkness, and made the cave a little warmer. Chapter 450 Twisted Love. It's hard to see an ice storm of this magnitude even in Freljord. The chaotic magic element will make the storm more lethal. Logically, such an ice storm will only occur in the dead of winter. Catherine patted the snow on her clothes in a panic, looking at the cave entrance blocked by the ice wall with some fear. Just from the sound of the wind like ghosts and wolves howling in her ears, she could understand how bad the environment outside was at the moment. Anyway, we are fine. Grace first helped Lester tidy up his clothes, and then threw the snow on her fur hat to the ground. The woman sat in front of the fire. Such a blizzard comes and goes quickly. We can continue on our way tomorrow, right, Grandpa Church? The old man nodded and walked to Grace into steps. That's right. Such a storm won't affect our journey. There is an empty cave inside. You two should rest early. I'll take care of Lester tonight, to prevent this guy from running away. You don't think I can run away like this, do you? Or do you think I can survive if I run away now? Lester frowned and asked the old man, but the old man smiled coldly. Who knows if you are hiding your strength? Catherine didn't say much, nodded to Church and walked deeper. Originally, Grace wanted to chat with Lester for a while, but she gave up the idea after seeing the old man's serious expression. The experienced old man has never made any mistakes along the way, whether facing the robbers and bandits on the road or the Narcs and warlords on the Dalmor plain. The old man can handle it with ease. If there was no church, there would be no telling how many troubles there would be along the way. Just like the ice storm tonight, the consequences of having nowhere to hide would definitely be much more difficult than now. Although she herself did not think that Lester had any hidden strength. Then I'm going to sleep, Grandpa Church. Go, Kit. As Grace left, the atmosphere at the entrance of the cave became weird. The old man standing there slowly bent over and leaned his face not far from Lester's eyes. He stared at Lester with his eyes open and didn't say anything. He just smiled strangely silently. The age spots on his face were like bruises on a dead body, trying to expand, like maggots under the distorted light and shadow of the flames. Did I dig up your ancestral grave? Then you should thank me. If there were no ghost-like ancestors, how could there be a ghost like you? Facing Lester's provocation, the old man did not mean to respond. Being stared at by the old man like this, Lester also felt some physical discomfort. His hands were tied behind his back with cow tendon ropes, and he couldn't do anything. He could only try to stand up. Just when he stood up, half of his body, his shoulders were pressed down by the old man, and Lester sat back on the ground. The old man's expression finally changed. The root of his mouth was grinning, and the depths of his pupils were faintly glowing with purple light. Seeing a magic wall suddenly appearing to separate the cave, where the two women were, from the cave entrance, Lester knew that the strange old man in front of him was ready to attack him. It seems that you have realized your situation, Kit. Are you really not afraid? The old man approached Lester evilly, and Lester looked at the old man without showing any weakness. I'm afraid of many things, but you are not qualified. The old man smiled and straightened up, and asked an irrelevant question in a change of topic. Why don't you keep Grace? If you ask, she might stay to help you. I can see that you have taken care of her as your daughter all the way, and she trusts you very much, but if I keep her, will you still treat her as your daughter? I can't see that you are still quite courageous. Lester didn't say anything, but just looked at the old man in front of him coldly. The old man sighed, sat opposite Lester, and pinched his loose skin with his fingers, which was full of holes like rotten walnut skin. Kit, do you know how hard we have been looking for you? We've been through more than 20 years, and look at me. I've become such a mess. I didn't seem to ask you to find me. If you are dissatisfied, you should go to the person who gave you the order. If I'm right, Lysandra is your master, right? Why don't you settle the score with Lysandra? What's the point of bullying me? Hearing the name Lysandra, Church's expression struggled, but soon, the old man returned to his ambiguous state again. Lester even read love intertwined with hatred from the old man's contradictory attitude. Yes, Lysandra is my master, but she is not qualified. She knows clearly what I have done for the Watchers, and she still wants me to take two idiots to carry out such a stupid mission to find you. I don't understand. I don't understand at all what the point of this is. I was chosen in the village at the age of 8 and began to study and train as an ice warlock. I have been loyal to her for decades, courting her, showing my loyalty to her, and giving her everything, even my soul, but she always rejects me with a cold attitude. I know she is noble, and I also know that I don't deserve her love, but she shouldn't treat me like this. I love her, but I don't owe her anything. Instead, she owes me. I have left my whole life to her, my youth to her, but she treats me as an insignificant little character. She knows clearly that I can no longer be human, but she still equipped me with 2 beautiful sorceresses just to seduce you. Do you know how painful it is for me? These days and nights I have been constantly reflecting on myself. What have I gained in return for everything I have done? I didn't know you were so pitiful that you were willing to be a castrated dog for a woman who didn't love you for the rest of your life. Shut up. What do you know? Have you ever truly loved someone and given everything for someone? You haven't. You have no right to say that to me. The old man's question stunned Lester for a moment, and he fell silent. The old man smiled triumphantly and took out the true icebox from the pocket of his robe. You don't understand what I've been through at all. Of course, I don't need you to understand. I don't need anyone to understand, and I don't need anyone to pity me, because my new master has promised me everything. I will regain everything I should have: youth, time, strength, a young body, and Lysandra, right? Yes, and Lysandra, that cold woman. I'm going to tear off her robes and taste every inch of her body hidden under the ice. She belongs to me, and she can only belong to me. Church took out the void crystal, pressed Lester's shoulder with his left hand, and put the void crystal against Lester's eyes with his right hand. Lester, you are the key to me proving myself. Oh, you use the void to deal with me? That's amazing. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.